Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone in attendance. The committee has under consideration the estimates of the Ministry of Seniors, Community and Social Services for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2025. I'd ask that we go around the table and have members introduce themselves for the record. Minister, when we come to you, would you please introduce the folks with you at the table? We'll start to my right.
Ron Weeb, Grand Prairie Wapiti.
Good morning, everyone. Brandon Lunty, MLA for Leduc Beaumont.
Chelsea Petrovic, MLA for Livingston McLeod.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Singh, MLA Calgary East.
Good morning, Jennifer Johnson, Lacombe Pinoca. To my right, Becky Lee is my assistant.
Good morning, Jason Nixon, MLA for Rimbey, Rocky Mountain House Sundry, Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services. To my far right is David Williams, who's the ADM of Housing. On my right is my financial ADM, Sonia Johnston. On my left is Cynthia Farmer, who's my Deputy Minister. And then on the far left is our ADM responsible for supports, financial supports, everything from Asian income supports. He has a much broader title than that, but it's not coming to me at the moment, but that's what he does, and that's Toby.
Marie Renault, St. Albert.
Janice Irwin, Edmonton Highlands Norwood.
Laurie Sigurdson, Edmonton Riverview.
I'm Jackie Lovely. I'm the MLA for the Camrose constituency and the chair of the committee. And we do have a member joining us online. Mr. Bochenko, would you kindly introduce yourself? Oh, you were off mute, but now you're back on. We can't hear you. There. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so Mr. Bochenko is having some technical difficulty, but he's here joining us online. Now we'll continue on with some housekeeping items here. I'd like to note the following substitution for the record. Mr. Weeb is here for Mr. Long. A few housekeeping items to address before we turn to the business at hand. Please note that the microphones are operated by Hansard staff. Committee proceedings are live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Alberta Assembly TV. The audio and video streams and transcripts of meetings can be accessed via the Legislative Assembly website. Members participating remotely are encouraged to turn on your camera while speaking and mute your microphone when not speaking. Remote participants who wish to be placed on a speaker's list are asked to email or message the committee clerk, and members in the room should signal to the chair. Please set your cell phones and other devices to silent for the duration of the meeting. Finally, further to the direction of the committee, we have arranged to provide ASL interpretation service at our meeting this morning. And are they online? Or what time will they be joining us?
It's like in the chamber, it's remote.
Okay, so they're available this morning?
Yes.
Okay, available this morning. So thank you so much. Honorable members, the main estimates for the Ministry of Seniors and Community Social Services shall be considered for 6 hours. Standing Order 59.01 sets out the process for consideration of the main estimates in legislative policy committees. Suborder 59.016 sets out the speaking rotation for this meeting. The speaking rotation chart is available on the committee's internal website, and hard copies have been provided to the ministry officials at the table. For each segment of the meeting, blocks of speaking time will be combined only if both the minister and members agree to speak that way. If debate is exhausted prior to 6 hours, the ministry's estimates are deemed to have been considered for the time allotted in the main estimate schedule, and the committee will adjourn. Should members have any questions regarding speaking times for the rotation, please email or message the committee clerk about the process. With the concurrence of the committee, I will call a 5-minute break at the midpoint of the meeting. Does anyone object to having a break this morning? I will pause now for Mr. Bochenko, who's here in person, to introduce himself. Go ahead, sir.
I apologize for difficulties with my phone. Andrew Bochenko, Drayton Valley, Devon.
Thank you so much. Ministry officials who are present may, at the direction of the minister, address the committee. Ministry officials seated in the gallery, if called upon, have access to a microphone in the gallery area and are asked to please introduce themselves for the record prior to commenting. Pages are available to deliver notes or other materials between the gallery and the table. Attendees in the gallery may not approach the table. Space permitting, opposition caucus staff may sit at the table to assist their members. However, members have priority to sit at the table at all times. Points of order will be dealt with as they arise, and individual speaking times will be paused. However, the block of speaking time and the overall 3-hour meeting clock will continue to run. Any written material provided in response to questions raised during main estimate should be tabled by the minister in the Assembly for the benefit of all members. Finally, the committee should have the opportunity to hear both questions and answers without interruption during estimates debate. Debate members, please follows through the chair at all times, including instances when speaking time is shared between a member and the minister. I would now invite the Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services to begin with your opening remarks. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to your committee for having us this morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to be here today to provide an overview of Seniors, Community and Social Services budget. Seniors, Community and Social Services will invest $5.3 billion to protect and improve the supports that vulnerable Albertans rely on. Budget 2024 includes critical investments into key programs, including targeted increases to fund sustainable caseload growth in AISH, income support, and Alberta senior benefits, ongoing indexation of financial benefits, record funding for homelessness and housing supports, and continued investment to help Albertans build their skills and find jobs. With more than 90% of our annual budget flowing directly to individuals and frontline organizations supporting vulnerable Albertans, Budget 2024 supports the goal to help individuals and their families thrive and succeed. One of our key priorities centers on ensuring vulnerable Albertans can access critical financial supports. This includes AISH, income supports, and Alberta senior benefits. These programs provide a vital lifeline, helping many Albertans meet their essential needs. As part of our commitment to supporting those who rely on these programs, we continue to index benefits to help those most in need keep up with rising costs. In January, we increased benefits by 4.25% and will continue to index benefits annually to keep pace with inflation. We heard loud and clear Albertans wanted and needed their benefits indexed as well as delivered prior to the first of the month, and we listened. Starting with the March benefit payments for AISH and income supports were issued 4 business days before the first of the month. This change has given people more time to pay their bills and helping prevent unnecessary late charges. Through program improvements like these, we are making sure programs work for those who rely on them. Albertans value the AISH program. The AISH core benefit rate remains the highest in the country for single individuals with disability. Budget 2024 invests a record $1.65 billion into the AISH program, an increase of more than $108 million. While these benefits help meet people's basic needs, we also know many people with disabilities want greater independence and an opportunity to earn some income if they can. Our government supports this with several programs in place for people with disabilities who want to expand their skills and ability to work. We are proud to support Albertans with not only the highest monthly benefit, but also the most generous income exemptions in the country. Our government is focused on job creation as well and making sure Albertans have what they need to thrive and succeed. Since the pandemic, fewer Albertans are using the income support programs that we have as more people have returned to work. In fact, Alberta's unemployment rate has decreased from over 15% in May of 2020 to 6.2% as of January 2024. Department staff are actively helping individuals who are looking for work find meaningful employment, which is contributing to this decrease. Budget 2024 maintains funding for the Employment and Income Support Program at $792.9 million. To further support Albertans in finding and maintaining meaningful employment, we're investing almost $96 million in career and employment services. This will ensure Albertans who are looking for work have access to resources they need to gain new skills and to rejoin the workforce. In 2024, we anticipate that 65% of Albertans who use the ministry's employment services will enter the workforce. This strategy supports Albertans to build resilience, gain independence, and move off the income support programs when they are stable enough to do so. Our government is also investing $536.4 million towards grants and low-interest home equity loans through seniors financial assistance programs to support more than 189,000 seniors with low income to meet their basic needs. To further support seniors, we have increased investments into community grants for seniors to $6.1 million in order to support coordinated community action for senior services, expanded programming for elder abuse prevention, and targeted outreach initiatives to deliver social supports for older adults. Of this budget, 2024 also includes $3.3 million, $9.7 million over 3 years for seniors experiencing abuse by supporting the following initiatives: supporting communities' coordinated response networks across the province, increasing operational funding for elder abuse shelters in Calgary and Edmonton, and establishing the new Safe Spaces programs in rural Alberta. We have a commitment to make sure that those depending on our programs get the supports that they need. In Budget 2024, we have increased funding for disability services by $48.2 million, a 3.1% increase from Budget 2023. In 2023, significant investments were made to increase wages for frontline disability workers, increasing funding to support service providers, and reducing the PDD waitlist and caseload growth. And these investments have enabled staff to tackle the backlog of families waiting to receive FSCD services. In the last year, we processed 6,500 applications, and over 5,500 families have begun accessing FSCD since April 1st, 2023. Budget 2024 maintains these investments and the funding for FSCD programs. We know how valuable FSCD programs are to children with disabilities and to their families in our province. As I mentioned earlier, Budget 2024 is strengthening public services for Albertans, and that includes those struggling with homelessness. Homelessness remains a very personal matter for me. I know firsthand the difficulty and the complex nature of this issue. Our government is committed to addressing this crisis in Alberta and working to make homelessness brief and non-reoccurring. Budget 2024 includes significant investments for homeless shelters. In fact, we increased funding for homeless shelters by $24.6 million. That's almost a 30% increase from last year. This funding ensures that we can continue to implement the action plan on homelessness, which includes providing 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week shelter supports. To tackle this problem, we must be willing to try new solutions. This winter, we opened a navigation center in Edmonton to help connect those living in dangerous encampments to shelters and housing, health supports, financial benefits, and other important social services. We took action to ensure vulnerable Albertans have access to a safe, warm bed at night and to wraparound services. This is a dynamic and important file. We will keep working with cross-ministry partners, Indigenous leaders, and other levels of government to create positive outcomes for those dealing with homelessness. Providing adequate shelter is only one part of addressing the homelessness crisis. Supportive housing is an integral part of this response. Supportive housing includes subsidized housing and on-site health and social supports, including mental health and wellness, addiction, and supports to build life skills. These services help provide stability, autonomy, and dignity for those who otherwise would struggle to maintain a permanent home. And that is why we are maintaining annual funding of more than $100 million to support programs that move people out of homelessness and into stable housing linked with supports. This is part of our commitment to support a variety of programs, including supportive housing, intensive case management, and rapid rehousing. In 2022-2023, that investment helped ensure over 7,800 Albertans were provided with housing and supports. And this approach is working, Madam Chair. Approximately 92% of Albertans who received housing and supports last year have remained in stable housing. Albertans receiving housing with support spent fewer days in jail, have fewer interactions with the police, and spent fewer days in the hospital than before receiving housing. Our commitment to housing does not stop there. We are working hard to expand affordable housing across the province. The Stronger Foundations Affordable Housing Strategy maps out what is needed to provide an additional 25,000 households by 2031. Budget 2024's capital plan allocates $840 million over 3 years to provide 5,100 affordable housing units and supports more than 6,000 jobs. This includes investing almost $121 million over 3 years to maintain and repair government-supported housing units. We are also investing in a new program to modernize senior lodges and to ensure that they meet the needs of Alberta's seniors today and into the future. Our commitment to increase Alberta's affordable housing supply is unwavering. Since 2019, we've completed almost 3,200 new affordable housing units, 430 new shelter spaces, and expanded rent supports to additional 2,300 households. Through Budget 2024, the investments we are making strengthen our commitment to uphold the security and the potential of each and every Albertan. By prioritizing strong yet responsive investments, our government is creating a sustainable future so Albertans today and tomorrow have the supports that they need to succeed. In closing, Budget 2024 is a well-thought-out and responsible plan. It puts Albertans and their families first, it secures the future of Alberta, and it ensures vital services remain in place to support vulnerable Albertans. We will continue as a department to make sure that we work on some of the biggest challenges that we face today. I'm very proud to say that we've been able to come forward with a budget at the same time as a tough fiscal time, as the Finance Minister has had to address, that still maintains our funding, in fact increases our funding in this year, particularly on some of the biggest issues that we face right now on the social services side, homelessness, housing, but as well as maintaining supports for those who depend on our supports as our population grows at an unprecedented rate, and we continue to see inflation growing at an unprecedented rate across the province and across the country. I am confident that the budget that the department has put together will continue to be able to maintain the excellent programs that Albertans depend on each and every day to be able to make sure that they can live happy and thriving lives. And we are going to continue to make sure that we implement those programs going forward. And Madam Chair, I think that you will see over the next 6 hours the tremendous amount of work that goes into both seniors, community, and social services, as well as all the effort that comes from my assistant deputy ministers and the thousands of employees that work in this excellent department each and every day to provide support to the people of Alberta. And with that, Madam Chair, I will turn it back over to you in your committee for questions.
Thank you so much, Minister. Member Gray has joined us. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Christina Gray, MLA for Edmonton Millwoods.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. This brings us now to the question and answer portion of the meeting. For the first 60 minutes, members of the official opposition and the minister may speak. Honorable members, you will be able to see the timer for the speaking block, both in the committee room and on Microsoft Teams. Members, would you like to combine your time with the minister? And Minister, what's your preference?
Back force fine.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's proceed.
Okay. Thank you to the chair and to the minister for those opening remarks, and thank you to the ministry staff that are here as well. I want to begin by acknowledging the critical importance of today's estimates as we are discussing money that flows to some of the most vulnerable folks in our province. And of course, this ministry plays a critical role in the livelihoods of those individuals. And so the weight of this discussion is not lost on me. And my hope is that as we talk about this budget today, that we can maintain a respectful level of decorum. And as a result, I want to begin today talking about homelessness, which is a pressing issue in our province and in the communities that I'm very proud to represent. So, to begin, overall, it's incredibly concerning that at a time when investments in supporting unhoused folks are needed more than ever, this UCP government is cutting funding for homelessness outreach and support services from $218 million in the current year to $213 million in 2024-25, as noted on page 87 of the fiscal plan. And, you know, I can share my thoughts, but I also want to share the thoughts of folks who are very engaged in this work. The Edmonton Coalition on Housing and Homelessness note that this budget in particular, this line item cut in particular, will make it difficult to ensure health and safety for people who have already lost their housing, poor funding for community mental health services and facilities, and for adequate compensation and training for people working in the human services sector adds to the difficulties.
Let's answer the question.
It doesn't seem fair to interrupt.
First of all,
can I get to my question? Which was
ask the question. Thanks, Madam Chair. That
So it's
is
gonna
not a
go
line item that is being cut for adult homeless services. What that line item reflects, so I could save the honourable member some trouble, is a decrease due to the transfer of the youth homeless grant to the Department of Children and Family Services. The reality is that we continue with the highest level that we've ever invested in homeless services in the province, as I stated in my opening remarks. And while we are dealing with some transfer of different divisions of the department to other ministries, including the Department of Children's Services, where it makes sense for them to lead the way when it comes to things like youth shelters, so we can focus on the adult side of the homeless file, while Minister Turton focuses on children. We're providing actually approximately $108.1 million in funding for homeless shelters across the province alone. It's the highest amount ever. I can give you some breakdowns of that between us and our community-based organization fund, which is us. And we are providing $209.6 million with our partners when it comes to homelessness.
Okay, thanks. No, that's great. The challenge here is that yes, you can say you've got record levels of funding. You've also got record levels of there's also record levels of homelessness under this UCP government. And in fact, we've got a 90% increase since 2019 in Edmonton alone. And it's not just an Edmonton issue. We also know that homelessness in Lethbridge, as an example, has doubled since 2019. And all this should alert this government that far greater investments than the ones that the ministers has just laid out are needed. These are simply inadequate investments. But I'll get to a few more questions.
Well, no, I will respond to that, Madam Chair, if I could. First of all, to bring up Lethbridge, let's actually focus on that. That is a critical area that has faced some real challenges when it comes to both homelessness and addictions. It's an area, though, that the department and our friends in the Blackfoot have done incredible work. I was just down in Lethbridge a few weeks ago to announce money for their new shelter services. What we realized when it came to Lethbridge was that almost 100% of the homeless population of Lethbridge is Indigenous. and that was going to require a different type of leadership in the way to do shelter different. And so we went and we've made a partnership with the Blood Department of Health. As all members in this committee will know, the Blood would be predominantly the nation that would be around Lethbridge. They have taken over the operation of that shelter in partnership with the government, have done an incredible job. While we do see homelessness increasing in Edmonton, we also see homelessness decreasing in Calgary. And so we have to look at the reasons for that to be able to make sure that we come up with solutions to understand what is working in Calgary and what has not been working here in Edmonton. And the two things that we have seen, and this is what I think is the important point, is that we need to do some shelter different, like we see that's taking place in Lethbridge.
Yeah, that's a
which is
great
why you see
segue to my
investments.
questions
If
about
you
shelters,
see
actually.
investments, Madam Chair, in our Indigenous-only shelters, our women-only shelter spaces, and the highest amount of shelter spaces in the history of Edmonton to be able to respond to that need. And I also want to let you know,
Thanks,
Madam Chair,
Minister. I'm worried about my time, Madam Chair.
at no time has the
Some
capacity
equity,
of
right?
those shelters ever succeeded capacity. So let's just make sure that fact is clear, and then look forward to hearing some questions about the budget.
Thanks, Minister. No, that's a great segue into my questions about shelters. So, again, referring to page 123 of the business plan where you address tackling houselessness, there are no metrics in the business plan to measure the success of that specific outcome. So my question is, how does the ministry measure whether the shelter model is successful? What pathways to permanent housing are in place? What metrics of success are being used to look at long-term housing for people who were experiencing chronic homelessness? Objective 1.3 in the business plan calls for, quote, a housing-focused delivery model. So how is the government moving towards a housing model and away from a shelter model to address homelessness?
Well, those are two different issues. They are combined, but they're different issues that you need to measure. I mean, first of all, the emergency shelter system is designed to deal with emergencies. So, i.e. to make sure that people are safe, not in conditions where they would be freezing to death, and are receiving important daily services that everybody should be receiving, including the ability to shower, eat, stay warm, receive health services. And so we certainly judge whether or not that shelter system is doing its job based on the capacity of that shelter system, first and foremost. Our shelter systems anywhere in the province have never exceeded that capacity, and our providers continue to be able to provide that daily service. And thousands of Albertans are utilizing that service on a daily basis. But then further to that, you're right, we want to continue to be able to drive towards long-term solutions when it comes to homelessness into permanent supports, which is why in 2024, 2025, we are going to continue down the road that we have seen with the Navigation Center, which is making sure that we have the ability to provide wraparound supports to individuals. That includes getting people access to housing, but also is dealing with the fundamentals that is causing that homeless situation. Housing is not what causes homelessness. There are other major issues that cause homelessness, particularly addictions and mental health support. So we are continuing to do that. And as I said in my opening remarks, how we know we're being successful with that is that 92% of the individuals who take us up on the ability to go into more long-term housing remain in long-term housing in our province and go on to have success. So I don't know if the member has anything more specific to ask about the budget itself.
Yep.
But we are continuing to see great success when it comes to the emergency shelter system.
Yeah, and actually this is all quite relevant to the budget because the budget refers to the report of the homelessness task force multiple times. And so I think there's a clear connection between questions around that report and some of the things that I want to dig into there and the budget. Speaking of that same report, page 7 notes that the ministry will develop a logic model and specific outcomes for shelters, and that this tool will enhance accountability for public funds. So I'm wondering, I've got a few questions here. I'll just try to get through them so then you can answer. It talks about this logic model. Has this logic model been developed for allocating funds? Where do we access this information? Because we also see on page 9 that shelters receiving funding for 24/7 services will be required to adhere to service expectations established by Alberta Community and Social Services. I've been very clear that I've got some concerns about the conditions in some of the shelters, particularly in Edmonton, in my own riding of Edmonton, Highlands, Norwood. I've seen them firsthand, and I've also heard from so many folks who are experiencing homelessness. So it's clear that the standards are not being enforced. So
Well, Madam
I'm
Chair,
wondering when
that's-
this will change.
That's categorically
and
false.
what assurances do we have? Well, you
so
can clarify
let's address
for
that
me.
question first. I mean, if the honourable member is going to come and make assertions about multiple nonprofit organizations that
Not
work
multiple.
daily with the department. Madam Chair, I can see the honourable member getting upset, but that's who we
not at
depend on for our emergency shelter systems. It's pretty significant nonprofit organizations. And it's disappointing to continue to see the official opposition casts, doubt on the services that they provide. And through you, Madam Chair, to them, I'd like to apologize to all those providers for the behavior of the official opposition when it comes to that. But let me be clear, we do have service expectations when it comes to shelters. It's handled in all of our contract agreements with those shelters. Often what you'll hear, Madam Chair, is accusations that there will not be places to store people's belongings. Not true. There is in all of our shelter systems. That there won't be 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week operations. Not true. There is inside our shelter systems inside the province. And so those standards are met. Now, one thing that we do find often is that when members are referring to that, they're actually referring to agencies that don't have anything to do with the government, that i.e. are not in a contract to provide services for shelter to the government. And so often you'll have somebody come in and say, hey, I know this organization is not providing 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week support, but they're not associated with us. They don't receive a contract for us, and they're not an emergency shelter. So, again, I want to make clear that our shelter's doing a good job. But I do want to talk about this logic approach and being able to track it, which I think is that the point that the member is trying to bring up. Some of that is in progress right now, but we continue to build dashboards to be able to make sure that we can see real time. And then be able to evaluate and adjust to it. And one of the things that's really been beneficial, the navigation center approach that we've taken in Edmonton and why we will mimic it in other cities, is the ability to see real time. I mean, for the very first time, we've had a centralized approach that can allow us to know exactly what had happened the night before, how many of those different providers had space, how many did not have space, and be able to manage the system overall to be able to, utilize that data in a much more efficient way. And I have made clear to the department that they need to continue to build that up. And as they finish that process, we will come out with a very clear, transparent dashboard that all the public will be able to see in real time, just like us when it's completed.
Okay, I've got some questions on that in a moment, but just, can you tell me how much money goes annually to addressing the shelter standards? Is there a specific line item at all around shelter standards in particular?
We invest, well, there we go. Our shelter funding in the city of Edmonton was $42.5 million, as well as from our CBOs, which is us, $41.3 million, $83.8 million in the city of Edmonton. In Calgary, we invested $42 million in our CBO partners, which again, we fund the CBOs, $41.6 million, which is $83.64 million. In Fort McMurray, our shelter funding is $2.8 million, and our CBO funding up there is $3.3 million, which is $6.1 million. In Grand Prairie, I know there's some members here from Grand Prairie today, $3.9 million going into shelter funding, combined with our CBO funding of $4.2 million. Again, I can keep going through the entire list if the honourable member would like. Well, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's go
no,
Lethbridge,
that's okay, Minister.
$3.7
I've got a few more questions, Madam Chair, if you don't mind,
okay.
Particularly on the data piece, because I think you've indirectly alluded to the fact that some of the issues we're seeing are around the lack of data and clarity. The action plan on homelessness, which again is referred to on page 121 of the business plan, talks about developing a new provincial homelessness management information system, HMIS. This HMIS, it says, will develop data evidence and analytics to assess shelter and housing support program capacities. My first question is that what you're referring to? But I do have a follow-up, so I'll get to that right now. So, we saw a great deal of mass confusion when it came to reporting Edmonton shelter numbers throughout the fall and winter. And of course, Minister, I wrote the Minister about that, Madam Chair, including contradictory information reported by the Minister and by Homeward Trust. And we know that Homeward Trust has taken down their nightly breakdown of shelter spaces, and the new information provided by the government of Alberta is a lot less detailed. It gives, no verifiable information about the location or agencies responsible for the spaces. So my question is, what is the status of this HMIS? Is this developed? Is this the system you're referring to? If not, how are you determining the numbers? Like, what is being considered an emergency shelter space? Does it include spaces with eligibility criteria? So, yeah, what's the status of the HMIS, and is that what you're referring to, Minister?
The only mass confusion was being created by the official opposition.
Absolutely
we were very much aware each night exactly.
You weren't sharing it publicly or with the media. That's not a point of order.
Madam Chair, the point of order is under Standing Orders 23J. The member uses abusive or insulting language of a nature likely to create disorder. Madam Chair, the member has been disrupting the Minister with abusing, insulting language that are not appropriate to a good parliamentary practice, which would tend to create uncomfortable position on the part of the minister and it would be fitting if the member does not interrupt and let the minister continue and finish the answer. And also, if this format here, going back and forth is not working, I will recommend going a block time as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not believe this is a point of order. In fact, the member did not reference anything that the member from Highlands Norwood said that might be unparliamentary or insulting or cause disorder in any way, shape, or form. I see both parties in this debate enabling the exact same technique, which is we're short on time. People are trying to make sure we're getting to the crux of the matter. I don't believe this is a point of order, Madam Chair.
To be honest, members, I didn't hear anything that I would deem to be a point of order. I am having a little difficulty because I'm finding both parties are kind of talking over one another. So if you would just kindly direct the conversation through the chair, I think we'll have more of a respectful tone, and we'll be able to hear the respectful questions, but we'll also be able to hear the respectful answers from the minister. So if we could please proceed, let's pick it up. Where were we? Who was talking last? Okay, go ahead.
About the so-called mass confusion system that was created by others who did, particularly the official opposition at the time. But to be clear, we release each night the capacity of the shelter system. Some of that confusion was being caused, frankly, by the fact that Homer Trust actually does not run the emergency shelter system in the province. They have no connection to the overall running of that's actually run by the department with our nonprofit providers. And so the decision was made to centralize that process, be able to make sure each night that all came in through ultimately through my assistant deputy minister responsible for homelessness, so that we could make sure that we could coordinate amongst all the shelter providers that we have. Specifically on the technology question of what is taking place, we are working with our partners, obviously, over in the technology department. They are working on creating a new data portal for us that will include both all of our CBO and so homeless housing providers and our shelter providers all in one spot. That is in progress, and I hope will be completed sooner than later so that we can actually have that up so everybody can see what we see real time. But right now I'm very confident in as far as capacity numbers that we receive from the shelters that are coming up from each provider each day so that we can manage it. And I do appreciate that Homer Trust has acknowledged that they're not running that shelter system, but they don't want to add to that confusion by putting out numbers that they would not have that are accurate.
So, yeah, part of the challenge is publicly, the data that's being shared is very high level at this point. And so this is why I want to dig into it a little bit, because as we saw over the coldest months, the data was, in the shelter spaces data that you were sharing, it was including bridge and transitional housing, Madam Chair, pardon me. So what we saw is that transitional housing, bridge housing, a lot of these spaces that were being included in emergency shelter spaces have eligibility criteria. So an example would be Salvation Army transitional housing spaces, one of which is in my area. They have application forms and they have a long list of exclusionary criteria. So again, without that information, we can't be saying we had, at that point, 1,700 emergency shelter spaces available when they simply weren't emergency shelter spaces. And so I'm concerned about that lack of accountability, and I would urge the minister to restore that level of information.
Madam Chair, if the honourable member is trying to say that the work that transitional beds do in connection with the shelter are not somehow shelter and or emergency
they are not
shelter,
emergency shelter. You can't just walk in.
I'm just going to hear from the minister first,
Okay.
please. Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, through the chair, it's not the member's first day here. So, but if that is the assertion, she's incorrect. And it's unfortunate because, again, it's continuing to relay things that just ain't factual when it comes to the system. So if she's looking for a breakdown by city, I'm happy to provide it. Calgary, there are 2,089 spaces that are available to deal with homelessness. Edmonton, 1,796 spaces. At one point, we had 1,801. We have never, ever had to come close to that as far as capacity. So we're about 1,796 at the moment. Fort McMurray, 91. Grand Prairie, 147. Lethbridge, 121. Lloydminster, 28. Medicine Hat, 30. Red Deer, 230. Slave Lake, 20. Wetaskiwin, 50. And so those numbers are provided, as well as the detail of which organizations are providing it for us. and the type of organizations that we partner with to be able to complete that. What we need to do, though,
Madam
is
Chair?
continue to make sure
Believe my
that
time's
those who
running
are homeless know there's somewhere safe to go. And if they are hearing somewhere that there is not, that is incorrect. And that if anybody who needs supports
Yeah.
anywhere in these cities, please go immediately to our shelter providers. They will provide you safe support and make sure that all of our homeless are in a safe spot. And I think that's very important, particularly when it's cold
Thank you,
out.
thank you. I'm aware of my time, Minister. So, Madam Chair, again, not what I'm saying at all. I mean, it's very much a reality that those are not emergency shelter spaces. But I'll move on. This is about more
Well,
than
no,
numbers. This is about more than data. Let me continue. It's about the real humans who are impacted. And as noted on page 6 of the action plan, it talks about the voluntary approach to support folks leaving homelessness. I would argue that forcibly removing folks and throwing out their belongings, which the minister describes as garbage, isn't voluntary. My question is about the supports at the Navigation Centre, which I had the opportunity to visit, and I can say that there's some great work happening there. We've asked this, and the minister has been asked as well. He's talked about the number of services or the types of services that folks are able to access, but we haven't heard about how many people have actually been housed. So can the minister please share the data on how many folks accessing the Navigation Centre have been housed?
Well, first, we have to address again the honourable member's ridiculous comments again that somehow people that are leaving encampments have their stuff thrown out. That's not true. The process is that a City of Edmonton bus arrives at the same time as the teams that will dismantle that encampment. Everybody is provided a secure ability to transport their personal belongings to the Navigation Centre, and that has worked well. It's been a high priority of the government to make sure that takes place. What the member may be referring to is the 129 tons of garbage that had to be cleaned up at those locations, which include things like 4,000 used needles lying on the ground, and other things, including stolen property and other components of that certainly should not be left laying around the community. And so I would certainly hope it's not the official opposition's position now that we leave 4,000 needles lying in the streets and 129 tons of garbage for Edmontonians to look at. Now, if you're looking for the specifics of who has come through the Navigation Centre,
Just to repeat the question, I'm looking for how many folks have been housed. I do know the numbers on how many people have accessed the Navigation Centre, Madam Chair.
yeah, we can get that for you in 2 seconds.
Do we have a time check? Oh, thanks.
The vast majority have received housing services. I'm just looking, well, you know what, we'll actually get given the interest in this, I'll be happy to have our ADM responsible for homelessness come up. She'd be excited to tell you about some of the great housing stories that are taking place inside our Navigation Center. Over there.
Just hear from us. So they've chosen at the beginning, so we're going to continue on. Sorry.
Thank you for the question. Jen Anderson, Assistant Deputy Minister for Preventive Community Services Division. Sorry about that. Okay, so at the Navigation and Support Center, people are being housed both by the housing workers and directly through the shelter. And once they leave the center, we're not sort of tracking at that point. We leave that to our shelters and CBOs to do. However, as of last Friday, there's a few categories. So I'm just going to go through them all. 5 people have been housed, 1 through coordinated access, 4 by the Hope teams directly at the center. There's 220 referrals to coordinated access. 42 people have been accepted, and all are connected to a housing team. There were 127 access and eligible for intensive case management team for housing. 6 were eligible for supportive housing, and 30 were assessed as eligible for rapid rehousing. And then everybody else who's gone through the center has gone into a shelter or longer-term transitional shelter.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that data. And it's absolutely, I'll make it very clear, it's no criticism of anybody working on the front lines. They are doing all they can with limited resources. But the number just shared is 5, right? 5 out of the 5 that were housed, that's the number that was shared at the beginning, and then other people are provided services, and that's absolutely
Excuse
aligned
me,
with
member,
what.
so I'm a bit confused. Minister, could you just clarify for a moment?
The number that was shared was not 5 that have received housing. The vast majority of people who went to the Navigation Center end up in housing, either through shelters and or through our housing program. And so the number's not 5, but this goes back to the characterization.
Minister, honorable member, I can't hear the minister because you keep talking over him.
Yeah.
So we'll just respectful to one another, please. So if we would kindly direct the conversation through the chair, I'd like to hear the minister's answers. And member, you're going to have more than ample time to ask your
So,
questions. I'll make sure that.
I have the number here, and this will be probably about a week ago, the number that I have in front of me, but it's probably changed a little bit since then, of the 278 people, of that number currently have been connected to some sort of housing. So that's not 5. That said, though, Madam Chair, we do have to go back to talk about the issue around the other role that is taking place while the encampment dismantle is taking place, which is cleaning up and securing the city of Edmonton and making sure that Edmontonians can be safe. And this is something that I know the other party, the official opposition, doesn't want to do, which is fine. But this is a process that the city of Edmonton said was a crisis and was creating very significant challenges. They were finding things like weapons, people being abused within those encampments, which is part of that process.
Sorry, there are 4 people talking at once now. The only person that I'm going to hear from right now is Mr. Bochenko, who's called a point of order.
Okay, I call point of order on 23J. The member opposite, particularly with the tone of her questioning and the interruption of the minister's answer, is likely to create disorder. Member opposite has an opportunity to go with the block time or share time. With the block time, she could have talked for an hour. So perhaps next year, maybe we can go into block time so that we don't interrupt minister while he's talking, because I do not clearly understand either question or the answer. And if member opposite maybe stop interrupting minister, maybe perhaps she can learn a couple of things with his answers there. So I would appreciate if we can maybe let minister finish before we interrupt him.
Thank you, Mr. Bochenko. We'll hear from the opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not a point of order, and Member Boychenko has misunderstood 23J, which reads, uses abusive or insulting language of a nature likely to create disorder. The minister set the tone by interrupting the critic for housing in her very first question. We have very limited time, and the member, quite literally, I can quote, said, respectfully, Minister, because she is short on time. And so we're trying to get to answers. I do not find this to be a point of order.
Okay, so I'm just going to read the directions here. So the block of shared time is 20 minutes, during which time you may go back and forth with questions, comments, and responses. However, neither participant may speak for longer than 10 minutes at a time. So those are the instructions. So however you choose to manage it, block time was not chosen. It's a free flow, but I would, as chair, like to hear from both parties. And so the minister is speaking. So if we could pick up where the minister was speaking, and then we'll go to the member. But please, both of you, kindly direct your comments through the chair, and we'll continue.
Well, Madam Chair, through you, Honourable Member, if we get to some specific questions, we'd be very excited to answer them. But if we continue to see untrue statements, I will continue to correct them. But if not, I will be happy to answer his questions if they got a question about the budget. In fact, so far, over the last 10 minutes, I haven't even referred to the budget itself. So maybe the member has a question about the budget. Let's try that.
Again, I was really hoping it'd be a respectful tone, but again, this minister set the tone. So it's quite clear that on objective 1.3 in the business plan refers to the action plan on homelessness, which is what I'm continually referring to, and I'm trying to get some clear data. So I would like some clarity, perhaps if the ADM would like to come up again, because the notes that we took as she was speaking, it said that 5 folks have been housed. There have been 220 referrals, 42 have been accepted into housing first, 127 have been eligible for intensive casework. The reality is, 5 people have been housed. And again, this is no criticism. Allow me to continue.
No,
Madam
but
Chair.
here's the thing, actually.
I would love some clarity from the ADM. Okay.
Sorry, Minister. Okay, Minister, we'll just go back to the member, and then I'm hoping, once the minister or member finishes answering her questions, if the lady, I'm so sorry, your staff member from the back, if she could maybe just clarify what she was reading.
Madam Chair. I'm not going to refer anymore to the document the Honourable Member is referring to because it's not in the budget. So does she have a question about the budget?
So let's go to the honorable member for your questions.
It's wild to me, Madam Chair, that I wouldn't be able to ask about data around folks being housed when we're clearly referring to an action plan on homelessness. These are my constituents, these are people that matter, and we should be able to ask for data. Moving on, I'm interested in the approach of what services are being offered to folks who are accessing services. The task force report, and again referred to on page 123 of the business plan, talks about access to recovery-oriented services, including harm reduction, detox, treatment, and stabilization. So I love seeing that harm reduction is referred to in the action plan. But I know we have heard from some ministers who are very much degrading that approach. So, we know, folks on the front lines know that it's very important that folks are offered a range of services, meeting them where they're at so that they can get housed and that they can stay housed. So can the minister confirm for me that the budget does in fact support a range of services, including harm reduction? And if so, which line items would we find those, where would we find those services reflected?
Madam Chair, the budget, of course, has a range of services. If you listen to my opening remarks, you would hear the vast amount of services that go into a $5.3 billion budget. Specifically, if you're asking about the services around the navigation center, the work we do around homelessness, we have everything from healthcare supports, addiction recovery supports, housing supports, mental health supports, and other things like access to income supports. And one of the most interesting things that's taking place right now in the navigation center is about getting people ID, which is the greatest challenge that often individuals that are homeless have when they enter that process. So we partner with Service Alberta and are able to get people ID right there on the spot navigation center, which then gets them access to other services in the department, including income supports, or even the ability to get prescriptions filled that are gone through that process. We are not the lead when it comes to addiction recovery. That is led by the Department of Mental Health and Addictions. That said, we have an important role in that process, which is to connect people to pre-recovery and then after that to post-recovery housing. And so the department is very focused on what that process is, which is to get people to emergency supports, and then ultimately, if they are facing addictions, connected into Minister Williams and his department, recovery programs. If the honourable member is asking if I support the Alberta recovery model, the answer is most definitely yes. I support the Alberta recovery model. I think everybody should. And that is what our department continues to do, is to be able to make sure that we move people from places of addiction into long-term recovery in partnership with Mr. Williams' department.
I've focused a lot on what we're seeing in Edmonton. Of course, that makes sense, but it's important to talk about some of the smaller communities, and there are many that I could ask about. One question I do have is around Wetaskiwin. I note again in the the action plan on homelessness referred to on page 123 of the business plan that there's an allocation of $1 million to create up to 50 new shelter spaces in Wetaskiwin, and of course we know that has not happened. So I just would like an update, Minister, through the chair, on the new shelter, on the potential of a new shelter in Wetaskiwin. Is there a push from the local MLA and from this minister to move towards funding this project? And if not, who is supporting unhoused folks in Wetaskiwin right now? And what is the plan if they're not going to move forward with an expanded new shelter space?
Well, it's unfortunate to, again, have the member continue to state things that are fact or as fact that aren't fact. There is shelter spaces being run in Wetaskiwin as we speak, which is, and again, I see the honourable member St. Albert heckling in estimates, which that shouldn't shock us. I'm looking forward to that segment. There is shelter space in Wetaskiwin. It's currently being run through trailer systems that have been built. And yes, the local MLA has been a significant advocate of that approach. And we also have money for capital to continue to invest in a long-term permanent shelter within the city of Wetaskiwin. But I want to be clear, there is a shelter. And what's really important when it comes to Wetaskiwin is to emphasize the Indigenous approach that the government of Alberta is taking when it comes to homelessness, which is supported by people like Grand Chief Thomas up here in Treaty 6. I mentioned earlier in some of my comments when it comes to the work that's taken place in Lethbridge, which was one of the biggest challenges that we faced a couple of years ago when it came to homelessness, that we were able to really get on a good path once we were able to bring in long-term partnerships with the Blood Tribe down there, who are doing an incredible job with that shelter, which is why we now have a shelter here in Edmonton that is run by the Enoch, supported by our department, as well as by other First Nation communities. We're looking at similar approaches when it comes to Calgary, and why that's relevant for Wetaskiwin is that's absolutely essential for us going forward in Wetaskiwin, is to be able to make sure we have a good, strong partner with Massachusetts in particular, to be able to have that homeless population receive services that are Indigenous and culturally appropriate, to be able to have success. But I want to stress, Madam Chair, that there is shelter in Wetaskiwin as we speak. People would have slept in it last night.
Yeah, no, Minister, and again, we may not have heard what I was asking, but through the chair, I was asking about the new shelter space, and I have great respect for the work of folks in Wetaskiwin, and that's absolutely not what I was implying. I was asking about the new shelter space, which we know has had some controversy around it. Let's move on, though. I'd like to end this section by coming back to an issue very close to my heart and something we've been talking about a lot in the legislature. We know for a fact that higher rents lead to homelessness. This government's own task force report on page 4, again referred to on page 121 and 123 of the business plan, points to the fact that during periods of growth, higher market rents and more people moving to Alberta have historically correlated with increased homelessness in communities. And it notes that increases in homelessness are best predicted by increases in rent and provincial in-migration. And we know, all of us in this room, that we are experiencing both of these things, and rent increases are higher in Edmonton and Calgary than anywhere else. So I'd like to ask the minister, he's been very clear that his government won't support Bill 205, which will include rent caps. They refuse to increase rent supplements, which we'll get to more later, to keep pace with their own plan. So how in this budget specifically around rent, how specifically are rent increases being addressed when your own government documents mention the fact that higher rents mean more tents, higher rents mean increased homelessness?
Well, to be clear, our government's approach is not to have the homeless stay in tents. That's the official opposition's approach.
Well,
but
what's your plan?
we have, first of all, I want to be clear, Madam Chair, that while we are seeing the highest rent increases, the honourable member is correct, in Edmonton, Calgary, we still rank very, very low on the affordability scale in the country. In fact, Edmonton and Calgary remain the most affordable rents in the country, are pretty close to. Edmonton, I think, is ranking 32 or 35 in terms of actual rent costs at the moment. Just checking that is correct. What the challenge is when it comes to rent is that we must provide stability to the market. And that is going to mean we have to increase supply. That's the only way forward. Unfortunately, those who want to go down the path of rent control don't seem to understand that that won't increase supply. Actually, what that will do is end up stopping supply from growing, which means ultimately what we see in other jurisdictions, including right here in this country, Vancouver and Toronto, who have forms of what the honourable member is referring to, where you have the highest rent inside the country because supply was not able to increase, which is why you have now the federal government, the BC and Ontario governments working overtime to try to overcome that challenge, which is why we are very focused on increasing supply in the market, both on the affordable and the attainable side. But we must get that attainable side, and what I mean by the attainable side is the market side right, because that is where the bulk of that will come from, which is why we've worked on things like the reduction of red tape, Madam Chair, which is in the process right now of helping us create almost 50,000 more houses that the market would have ultimately been able to create, at the same time as investing inside more and more affordable government-run housing processes with our partners. But I want to be clear, the bigger way to deal with that rent issue is to be able to increase supply. And so, and the government's plan is working, and because you're now seeing the largest amounts of purpose-built rentals being built in the communities that she refers to, as well as the largest amount of residential construction in the history of the country taking place right here in the province of Alberta. But further that, we are also making sure in this budget, through pretty significant investments, that you're going to continue to see more affordable housing built, including 5,100 more capital builds, 1,900 more rental supplements for households.
Not what I asked about, so.
Well, it is what the honourable member asked for. She asked how we were
segue.
going to deal with rent control in the budget, or what our approach was different than the NDP when it came to rent control.
Right.
I just told you what our approach is.
Yeah.
Our approach is to be able to make sure that the market can do its job, and that more people have houses, and to make sure that we continue to make sure that we don't go down the road that the honourable member is proposing,
Thank you,
which would
Minister.
result in more homeless people.
That's a great segue. No, and we can agree. I'm happy to shake your hand after. We can agree on the fact that supply is absolutely critical. And I've said all along that rent caps are not the panacea to this, but they're one step that we can take immediately to keep Albertans in their homes. But this is a great segue into supply. When it comes to investments in affordable housing, the number this minister continues to throw out is $9 billion. He's been asked multiple times by us and by the media to provide a breakdown of how he has arrived at the number of $9 billion. We don't see this number anywhere in the budget documents. Yet he has repeated it at least a dozen times in the legislature and with the media. For instance, press conference on February 26th, he's noted that the Alberta government is investing $9 billion between now and 2031 to create 13,000 new units, and he again said it in Lethbridge as well. So I just want to know, and again, because I'm trying to understand how this, the connection to what the numbers we see in the budget, can you walk us through how he arrived at the figure of $9 billion, and which percentage of this figure is through private partnerships, which percentage is for non-market affordable housing? Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll hear from the minister now.
So the honourable member is forgetting another part of what we say when we're referring to the $9 billion, which is $9 billion between us and our partners. And our partner, we have a lot of partners, which is how we are able to accomplish the amazing things that are taking place in our province when it comes to housing. So some of those partners obviously would be the federal government, our municipalities, nonprofit organizations that we work with together, that are all working together on that investment within the system. What I can say specifically is in this budget, we've announced in 2024 that we have $840 million going in over the next 3 years. $719 million of that will go towards new builds, $121 million for repairs. Budget 2024 ultimately will support 7,000 more affordable households over the next 3 years, including 5,100 capital builds, as well as 1,900 households that will be able to receive increased rent supplements on top of the rent supplements that we already have. Some of the numbers that I also think are important to the question is that we've increased our rent supplements by 3,500 since 2021 households. Budget 2024 also is increasing the overall rent supplement program by 9.2%. And we are on track now to be able to deliver rental assistance to more than 14,000 households, which is about 28,000 individuals. At the same time, though, Madam Chair, is simultaneously doing the work that ultimately is going to be the core, the heavy lifting of this, which is continue to see more purpose-built rentals enter the system and the market able to do its job, which we see taking place right now in Alberta each and every month in a record-breaking way. So to be clear, Madam Chair, when we refer to that $9 billion number, we refer to all the work that is taking place in the province in partnership. And some of the members may not know this. Most of our housing projects that we often do on affordable housing are actually three-way partnerships. So you would see the Alberta government invest about a third of that project. The federal government often invests another third of that project. And then usually the organization that we're working with, often a municipality based housing authority, provide the other third investment, which is how we end up with all the numbers that we have going forward.
Thank you so much, Minister. I understand that the official opposition would like to change the person who's asking the questions now. Is that correct? Yes? Okay, please proceed, member.
Madam Chair, I'd like to use block time.
Block time has been requested. Minister, your preference?
I'm happy to go back and forth with,
I prefer block time,
but
Madam Chair.
she has every right to call for block time. Doesn't surprise me.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. So according to the Seniors and Community Social Services Annual Report 22-23, as of March 31st, 2023, there were 745,000 seniors in our province. This demographic we know is growing at a quicker rate than the general population age groups and expected to double to almost 1.5 million by 2043. We know overall our population growth and inflation was 6.2%, and this means to continue to provide the services and supports we currently do, we need a budget increase of 6.2%. However, the UCP is keeping spending overall to 3.9%, which means a cut to supports and services. This has an even greater negative impact on supports to seniors as this population is growing at a higher rate than the rest of the population. And certainly we know that it's so important, the work of this ministry, because these are preventative programs and they save the government money in the long run. Sometimes this is called deferred costs. Instead of using expensive public services like hospitals, emergency medical systems, police, institutional care, preventative programs support seniors to live with dignity in their community. And not only is this better for seniors, but of course, it saves a significant amount of money on public programs. And the work of this ministry is so important, and certainly I personally, as a young single mom, benefited from subsidized housing, and certainly my career as a social worker, I worked with many people who received support, so I think it's really important, the work of this ministry, and I'm very grateful for the work of the public servants and the minister, because this makes a big difference in people's lives. So I'd like the minister to refer to 7.2, Special Needs Assistance Grants. So we know that special needs assistance grants are funds that support seniors to age in the community. Seniors overwhelmingly want to remain in their communities as they age, and with the right supports, this is possible. And I certainly have heard firsthand from seniors the importance of this and their fears that they may not be able to stay in their communities for a variety of reasons. We know that with the right supports, mental health and general health are higher when seniors age in their communities. However, without these supports, seniors may experience social isolation, which leads to negative mental health and general health outcomes. And extreme cases, seniors may experience elder abuse. So having said all that, it's hard for me to understand why this program is experiencing significant cuts. And I'd like the minister to explain this and why not only is funding not keeping up with inflation and population growth, but it has been cut by over $4 million this year. And of course, as I just identified, the seniors population is growing at a faster rate than the rest of the population. And I guess I just want to make another point about, we know that 75% of health outcomes for seniors are determined by non-medical factors, the social determinants of health, Madam Chair. Food security, quality of social relationships, system navigation, transportation. And so these non-medical supports are really important, and supporting people to age in communities, which is what the special needs assistance grants is meant to do. So I'm quite concerned. This program it's really been gutted since the UCP became government. This year it's $4 million, but since 2019, on a regular basis, sort of not always annually, but the special needs assistance for seniors booklets come out and people can see what's in them. The most recent booklet, I just sort of compared it with what was given when we were government, so over the time. So this year budget is a significant cut, but it's $8.5 million since 2019. This program has been cut by the UCP. So I just have a few more detailed questions about this program. One of the things is that it's quite a low income threshold for people to be able to access this program, Madam Chair. And I'm just wondering what measure the minister uses to determine that. Does he use the market basket measure, the low income measure, LICO? What helps him decide that? Because it seems quite low, and that actually more Albertans should be able to access this program, because it is a program that keeps people in their homes. And we know that aging in community is something that certainly this government has spoken about, and we in the NDP really support also. So I'm just wondering how that is determined. And we know that many expenses that are sort of often help people live in community, like the personal response service, they have a monthly fee. People are living by themselves, and if they fall, this was something that the government used to support, and now they won't even pay for the installation in this program. So I'm concerned about that. Foot orthotics, oftentimes as we age, we need extra support. Our feet, change. And so now that's not even covered under this program. And that was, they gave 2 times in a lifetime $400. So that's a huge, loss for low-income seniors. Another thing is oftentimes, laundry expenses were supported. This is sometimes for people who are in institutional care, but that is now gone. So there's a variety of cuts to this program that are really substantial, and I'd really like the minister to help me understand why this is important.
Madam Chair, the point of order is understanding order 23B the member speaks to matters other than the question under discussion without referring to any line item. And Madam Chair, the committee has convened for the purpose of considering the ministry's 2024 budget, including estimates, fiscal plan, and business plan. The matter that has been raised by the members, which is not covered by this budget here, is not within the boundaries to these said topics. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, honorable member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not a point of order. I believe Member Singh has not followed the conversation. On page 192 of government estimates, we are discussing line 7.2, the special needs assistance grant. Everything that the member was talking about falls under line 7.2 in this government's investment or lack of investment in special needs assistance grants.
Thank you so much, honorable member. When it comes time to the minister to address this, thank you for referencing the page number for him to be able to follow and speak to it. So please proceed. I don't find this to be a point of order at the moment.
Okay, thanks very much, Madam Chair. So, just in summary, I would just like the minister to help me and all Albertans understand why this program is really being gutted. I mean, this is a fundamental program that has supported seniors, low-income seniors on very low fixed incomes to be able to stay in their communities. So $8.5 million has been cut from this since the UCP became government, and $4 million in this budget, which is devastating to many people. I'd like to move on now to 7.3, the Seniors Home Adaptation and Repair Program, and it's also called SHARP. That's the acronym for it, which makes it easy. So this is another important program that's meant to support seniors to age in their communities, and it supports seniors to make changes to their homes. For example, maybe removing carpets. When people age, also they may have some mobility issues. Sometimes. If they have stairs, they can apply for funding to, get a lift to take them up. And I mean, it just makes a huge difference. And I certainly know many wonderful stories of people being able to stay in their own homes for 10 years longer, and it made a huge difference for them because then they could enjoy their community and their yards that they often have put so much love into and created, so again, because I did discuss earlier about our very rapidly growing seniors population and the increase in inflation that was considerably high. This program is also being cut by about $500,000. And so, if anything, it should be increasing because, of course, our population is growing, as I've just said. So I'm just wondering what's going on here either. And of course, this is a value that the government has identified as something that's important to them. So, and it's absolutely important to our official opposition. And so if the minister could please explain why this program has also been cut. And now I'd like to refer to line item 1.2 and 1.1 and 1.2, Minister and Deputy Minister offices. So this line item supports government-wide policies and goals, and governments have challenges often working cross-ministerial because of, sometimes they get criticized for working in silos, but of course seniors programs are often several ministries that serve them. So I know that it's important, and of course it identifies it right here, that the minister work with other ministers to make sure that he's advocating for seniors and they're getting the supports they need. So back in 2019, the Seniors Advocate Office was cut. And at that time, the minister said, no worries, the health advocate is going to take care of all of those needs of the seniors. And the truth of the matter is the health advocate is exclusively for health issues. A third of the seniors advocate focus was on financial support, and a third was on social services, and a third was on health. But now we were told at that time that not to worry because all of these would be supported by the health advocate. But this isn't true. And the health advocate actually, in her last report, did indicate that those were out of the scope of what she does. And so I'd like the minister to address that, because that was something certainly that the UCP government said that they would do. Seniors would be supported. It was a redundancy.
Thank you so much. That's the member's time for questioning. Now, we'll move over to the Honourable Minister for his response.
Well, Madam Chair, thanks to the honourable member for her questions. I have good news for her. All the things that she says are cuts were not cuts. So let's go through that. We'll be able to help her out. Starting with special needs assistance grants, which the honourable member refers to 7.2. This actually is some adjustment within line items, which I'll go through in a minute. But to be clear, she asked actually what measures do we use to make these decisions. The measures that we actually use to make these decisions is to meet caseloads and demands. And so the program, the special needs assistance grants, actually, this reflects an adjustment to the lack of demand in the program. So we are meeting all of the demand that is requested within that program. And that line item reflects right sizing of the budget based on prior year's utilization of that program. And offsetting of program indexation costs. We have sufficient dollars within that line to be able to meet the full needs of that program, and there has been no change to the benefit itself, and that is a reflection of what is being asked for in the benefit. I will make clear, because 2024, that line item budget is 4.1 million. Right? I got that right? And then, just want to make sure we're on the right one. Yep. It's the right, sorry, the adjustment is 4.1 million. I want to make sure you're using the right number. And that change is due to lower than anticipated take-up for the program, to be very clear. That benefit was also indexed, so it is indexed at 4.25% as of January 2024. 3.4 million of this budget changes being reallocated ultimately to seniors community grants to support senior service organizations, deliver programs and services that help keep seniors safe and independent, which includes enhancing funding for elder abuse shelters, prevention efforts, and the delivery of non-medical home supports. So to be clear, benefit has not changed and will continue to be fully funded. This reflects use rates. Now, I'm glad the honourable member brought up elder abuse, which I think is clearly an important topic and something that the government continues to take very serious. That's why I referred to it in my opening remarks. Budget 2024 will include $3.3 million for seniors experiencing abuse. $435,000 of that will go to our new Safe Spaces program, which is about using our existing lodge system and capacity within that lodge to be able to help elders that are facing abuse be able to go to a safe location. $1.7 million is going to Unison Elder Abuse Shelter in Calgary and Sage Senior Safe House in Edmonton. And we're also investing $1.1 million to the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council to support coordinated community response networks. This funding over 3 years is investing $9.7 million in elder abuse prevention, and that would total up of just over $2 million for the Safe Spaces program, $2.6 million for both shelters, just over 2.6 for both of the shelters in Edmonton and Calgary, and then ultimately 2.4 million to the Alberta Abuse Awareness Council to support that community response. So the member can rest assured we continue to invest significantly in elder abuse prevention and will continue to going forward. I think the third thing that she raised was around the senior home adaptation and repair and property tax deferral loans program. For some of the members that may not know about this program, it allows senior homeowners to finance home repairs and adaptations through low-interest home equity loans with the government. The program offers low-interest home equity loans to a maximum of $40,000 per household for seniors with household incomes of $75,000 or less. No changes are being made to that program. That will remain at the $9.5 million budget allocated to SHARP in order to provide those loans to eligible seniors. Typically, over 400 loans are provided annually at an average of over about $11,000 per loan. So again, to the honourable member, rest assured that program remains in place. And then lastly, she brings up the seniors health advocate, or the health advocate situation. I don't know if there was a specific question there beyond the fact that the decision of the government to bring the advocate into one location. But we continue to work very closely with the advocate and are very confident in the work that is taking place with Alberta Health, which I think also refers to some of the biggest work that the department would be doing when it comes to seniors at the moment is our partnership with the Ministry of Health. As the refocusing of the healthcare system takes place, we will be making sure, and I've been brought to the table to participate in the process of developing that new continuing care organization to make sure that it ultimately reflects not only seniors, which will be a very important part of that program, and will have impacts on all of our communities, but also on some of the key stakeholders that we're responsible for in our ministry that have often been forgotten in the large work that health has to do, including those with disabilities, the homeless, and other key sectors, to be able to make sure that this takes place going forward. I think that is probably where you'll see a tremendous amount of that effort to be able to make sure that we are at the table advocating for seniors in that work that's taking place for healthcare reform. I wouldn't mind talking about some of the other grants that we have taking place in the department when it comes to seniors. We talked about the elder abuse. But we moved over to several different community grants when it goes. I'm just trying to pull them up. There they are. Thank you. Through our seniors community grants, we have the ministry is working with community-based senior service organizations to address the priorities of our growing seniors population. Some of those grants now are funding those community-based initiatives that are meeting the emerging needs, I should say, of issues facing Alberta seniors. Projects include funding for Healthy Aging Alberta to support coordinated and collaboration among Alberta senior sector, funding to support elder abuse prevention, which we've talked about, funding for elder abuse shelters, targeted outreach initiatives delivering social supports to older adults. And the department continues to make sure that the efforts that we put in are often helping make sure that seniors can ultimately remain in the communities that they built, and our grandma and grandpa can remain in the communities that we live in and can be able to live happy and productive lives inside their community of choice. And I think there's some very exciting work taking place in the department when it comes to this important area.
Thank you so much, Minister. You know, I think we'll pause for our 5-minute break now. Let's break, and then when we come back, we'll go to the independent member for her questions. Thanks, everyone. That's our time for the break. Let's settle back in. Thank you, everyone. We're going to get started right away here. So we are now going to move over to the independent member for 20 minutes of questions. Member, would you like to combine your time with the minister?
I would prefer shared back and forth if the minister's willing.
Minister?
Of course.
Fantastic. Let's proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the minister. We'll start with page 121 of the Minister Business Plan. It states that the ministry will continue to improve and expand the housing system by 40% to serve a total of 82,000 households by 2031. On page 124 of the Ministerial Business Plan, 1C, it states the goal of supporting 25,000 more households by 2032-33, as identified in the 10-year Stronger Foundation Strategy. First, could the minister clarify if these two different line items are related, and if so, how? And then can the minister provide some more information on where these households will be concentrated? Specifically, what will be the approximate ratio for urban versus rural?
Great question. Thanks to the Honourable Member for the question. They are related. Everything on housing is related at the end of the day. But so we'll give you a summary, and then I'll ask some of my officials maybe see if they can get a rural versus urban breakdown. Alberta's Stronger Foundation's Affordable Housing Strategy has committed to supporting an additional 25,000 households over 10 years, as you mentioned, member. Of these, 13,000 are being addressed through the creation of new units, and 12,000 through rental assistance. Budget 2024 puts us on track to meet that goal. By 2026-2027, we will be just shy of the halfway point, and funding will continue to ramp up as we continue to implement the strategy. One thing that I think is very important when we talk about overall on housing is that it's two components. So there's the investment we put into affordable, but also the investment and the policy process that we're putting into making sure that the market can continue to create the tens of thousands, particularly of rental-only spaces that we need, which we see taking place right now in the province. I'm just seeing if we got a breakdown by rural or urban. So Edmonton will receive about 24.7 million in 2024 calendar year, if I got this right. But this looks like it's operating, guys. I think that the member's looking for a breakdown on units. And I don't know if we have it with us here. Oh, we do. It's about 50-50 between rural and then in this context, I think they'd be defining urban as Edmonton and Calgary.
Okay, that was easy. Thank you, Madam Chair, to the minister. On page 121, again, of the Ministerial Business Plan, it states the ministry is working to increase mixed use or mixed income housing models. Can the minister explain these two terms and how this will enable long-term sustainability through the Affordable Housing Partnership Program?
No, I can, but I will actually let ADM Williams, who's with us here at the table, answer, because he'll give you a much more detailed answer on the two definitions than I will.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the goal for mixed use and mixed income is rather than have a traditional sort of apartment style building where you only had individuals who were all paying 30% of their rent geared to income, we would actually allow for a mix of different incomes where people would have different rent levels. So people could move, as they improve, they can move up within the same community. So the way the band works is we have three bands within the building. One would be a deep subsidy, which would be 60% of the average market rent. We'd have a near market band, which would be around 81 to 99% of average market rent, and a mid-range band of 60 to 80%. And so we allow for a mix within the building in order to offset the operating costs of the building, because obviously if you're offering significantly below market rent rates, it becomes hard for the building to be sustainable and to operate. And the other part around mixed use is there's an example of it here in Edmonton. If you go up to the Londonderry building, it's not only social housing in the building, but we've also incorporated daycare and other services in the building. So mixed use would mean not just purely housing, but incorporating other services. So we've got other opportunities for other services to be combined and offered within our housing facilities.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the minister and staff. On page 121 of the Ministerial Business Plan, can the minister explain what the pilot shelter
excuse me, service hub is and where it is reflected in the budget.
We got that.
About 2/3 of the way down.
Service hubs would be underneath line item in the budget 5.2, which would be homeless shelters. And then the second part of the question, sorry?
An explanation of what service hub is.
Well, what our service hubs approach is very similar to actually, frankly, what we tried to now bring into one united way within the navigation center. But it's about a hub approach, as we call it, which is to bring all of the service providers, all of the services that we have within both the social services sector, partner ministries, and other organizations that work with us all together to be able to help that individual. So it's about trying to bring around supports. So that's what the service hub is referred to is our hub-based model when it comes to homeless shelters.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to the Minister. And to be clear, the Navigational Center is called Service Hub?
No, the navigation center is different than service hubs, but it's a build upon on that approach. So shelters providers ultimately provide a mix accommodations and on-site services while facilitating enhanced access to key resources, including housing options, mental health and addiction supports, cultural supports, on-site income supports, program and ID services, and primary health services, which is the investment that we've done into our hub services in our shelter system already, which what we've done with the navigation center is bring that all into one location to be able to make sure it all takes place in one location. But what both come down to is about trying to provide wraparound supports to individuals that are facing homelessness. So we ultimately end up dealing with the main day-to-day function issue, the emergency issue, making sure people are fed, housed, and safe. But with our hub model, we bring in our other agencies that help deal with things like health, access to addiction supports, ultimately transitioning into housing and other supports through what we call our hub model. So it's about wraparound services.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister. Page 123, under Outcome 1 Initiatives, 108.1 million is allocated to homeless shelters to provide safe temporary accommodations to basic needs services, and 101.5 million to provide safe housing and supports to those experiencing homelessness. Again, these two outcomes sound very similar. This is also reflected on page 189 of Estimates 5.2, Policy Development, Management, and Delivery of Programs that support and deliver homeless shelter services and homeless support outreach services. Can the Minister explain the difference between these two items?
Thank you. Yep. So 108.1 million, which is being allocated to homeless shelters, which that money is going towards providing safe temporary accommodations and basic needs that would be serviced within that shelter system. The 101.5 million is ultimately provided to provide safe housing and supports to those that are experiencing homelessness. So it's about, one's about that emergency level of housing. The other is a direct investment into more long-term housing options for those that are experiencing homelessness.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarity, Minister, through the Chair. And on page 124, under Outcome 2, 2.3, what are the current rates of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? Are they rising or falling, and what supports are currently in place for this group of people? This is also reflected on 4.6 of page 189 of Estimates.
Yeah, go ahead. Given the specificity of that, I want to make sure we don't say it wrong. So we will ask our ADM at Disabilities, if we could, Madam Chair, to come up and he'll give it to you in a very clear format. Clay, he's on his way. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Clay Buchanan, ADM Disability Services. So with FASD, we support a number of networks throughout the province. And these community-based networks are really our delivery system throughout the province. So they work directly with families and individuals to support FASD. Excuse me. And I think from the perspective of growth, it's a percentage of the population. So population grows, incident of prevalence and incident of FASD also grows in the population. So it's really tied to that. We spend currently $25 million in this current fiscal year, and next fiscal year, that budget will be maintained as well. I don't know if you have any other questions.
No, to be clear, thank you, through you, Chair, to the staff. It sounds like it's just remaining stable in that regard, if it's just directly linked. Okay.
I think that's a fair summary.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, on page 110, the fiscal plan is 130 million, including 125 million in new funding for the Seniors Lodge Modernization Program to ensure lodges continue to be a viable housing option for our Alberta seniors. This is also referenced in the fiscal plan 2024 on page 75 under operating expense highlights, 19 million for seniors lodges. The Lacombe Lodge, I believe, is the oldest in the province, and naturally, they are adding maintenance issues to their list every month. It serves a large region, including the growing population of over 12,000 in Blackfalds, where there is no seniors housing. Is there money in the budget outside of the Seniors Lodge Modernization Program to replace this aging seniors lodge and others? And if so, will Lacombe Lodge be included in the replacement funding?
Well, first of all, Madam Chair, to the honourable member, good job advocating for her constituents. I can't answer specifics on a project here today, but what I can say is that the Lacombe project certainly fits the eligibility of the type of lodges that we're trying to fund. And she's done a great job advocating for it. I think what I hear in her question is maybe whether or not there's money coming forward to both replace and invest in capital maintenance of aging lodges. And the answer to that question is yes. We are trying to balance both issues. Sometimes you have to make decisions on infrastructure based on the fact whether it's repairing makes sense and building new would make more sense or be more affordable. But we do know, and we heard very clearly from the industry over the last year, the need to be able to continue to invest in both. And so this budget has investments both in what we would call capital maintenance and renewal dollars, which is targeted investments to be able to repair existing units. I think it's $121 million over the next 3 years for capital maintenance and renewal. It's in the budget. We did last year as well. You might have seen some announcements where we really targeted units that were either offline or about to come offline to make sure that we could save them for utilization. But then there's also that overall investment in capital that is taking place throughout the budget to do both. And so specifically to Lacombe, we know that it's going to be a new building and that we're past the realm of capital maintenance and renewal. But we do know that we need to keep investing in both going forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the Minister. Camp LG Barnes, established by Red Deer Michener Centre for the purposes of supports for the disabled, has been successfully functioning since the 1980s. Page 188 of Government Estimates 4.1 and 4.4 both reference the coordination to support continuous improvement of supports and services for adults with disabilities in Alberta, and to provide comprehensive support to families of children with disabilities to strengthen the family's capacity to promote their child's development and participation in activities in the home and in the community. Is there a line item in Budget 2024 to ensure the funding and continued success for Camp LG Barnes?
I'm LG Barnes MLA, as you know, though you are almost their MLA by about a feet. I think it is exactly the line, and I love going and visiting with the camp and want to congratulate them on all their important work. During that transition time with the department, LG Barnes had to go through a rejigging process as things have realigned. The department has funded them several times along the way to be able to help them go through that process, to be able to make sure that they can continue to do their current work. And we will remain in close contact with the camp as they begin to adjust into what will be a new non-government process. But we recognize and value the services that they're providing.
And thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the minister. And as you mentioned, non-government process, that takes me into my next question as well. You mentioned many partnerships with non-government organizations. Can you expand upon that and how the ministry is working with non-government organizations to expand the services of your ministry?
Well, it's a big question. It's an important question. I want to stress that I think what's really special about Alberta is that I would say that we're amongst the best provinces as far as relationships with a variety of nonprofits, which is special and why we're able to accomplish so much. We certainly value all of them. The issue why it's such a big question is because this department has such a variety of tasks that it's taking on that you're going to see such a variety of different nonprofits that go forward. So maybe I could ask you to the member whether or not there's a more specific type of part of the department you'd like to hear about some of the nonprofit organizations that are involved. But we cannot provide the services that we are providing without our nonprofit partners. We talked a lot this morning when it comes to both housing and homelessness, for example. We rely completely on, not completely, but we rely significantly on our nonprofit partners to run our emergency shelter system. They have for decades inside this province. We rely on housing authorities to partner with us to be able to complete our objectives when it comes to both affordable housing. We rely on nonprofit organizations in our communities to help be able to facilitate the grants that we have to help seniors be able to healthily age within place. And then, of course, as we go into other aspects of the department, it will be the same thing, just different nonprofits reflecting the scope of the work that they do.
Great. It's good news, Madam Chair, and thank you through you to the minister. On page 125 of the Ministerial Business Plan 3B, Performance Indicator, Seniors' sense of belonging to local community. This indicator is a proxy for social inclusion and community connectedness and is tied to the ministry's work related to social isolation, age-friendly communities, ageism, and aging in the community. The percentage of Alberta seniors reporting positive sense of belonging to local community. First, how does one measure this metric, and can the minister explain why we are seeing downward trends? And that is from page 125 of the Ministerial Business Plan.
Yep, thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to the honourable member. That indicator describes the percentage of Albertans aged 65 and older who report a somewhat strong or very strong sense of belonging to their local communities at the time of the survey. It provides context on seniors' engagement with the local community, as well as their quality of life in Alberta. The indicator is a proxy for social inclusion and community connectedness. It ties directly to the ministry's work related to social isolation, age-friendly communities, ageism, and aging in the community. Data for this indicator is obtained from the Canadian Community Health Survey conducted by Stats Canada. In 2022, 71% of seniors reported a somewhat strong or very strong sense of belonging to their local community. The result represents a 1% decrease, which is what the member is referring to, overall results from the prior year, and the lowest result over the last 5 years. The COVID-19 pandemic may have contributed to that decrease in results since 2019, as public health restrictions to contain the spread of the virus led to many seniors experiencing social isolation and loneliness and anxiety, something that we will continue to watch as we go through this year, the further we get away from COVID-19. To make sure that that indicator starts to go back in the right direction. I would also say, Madam Chair, to the honourable member, that this is also why we're working very closely with health when it comes to continuing care, to make sure that the community aging aspect of it is also looked at beyond just traditional health care. We want to make sure that obviously seniors are receiving the health care that they need, but that we understand that this has to be all about how we live in a community, and that there are other aspects to continuing care beyond just health care.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the minister. In light of our time, I'll just finish up with this last question. AISH is going up significantly, more than 100 million. How will this be rolled out to Albertans, and what is reflected in this increase? This is from page 126 of the Ministerial Business Plan.
Asia is going up significantly. It's going to be an investment of about $1.65 billion in this budget. It is a reflection of making sure that we can meet our indexation obligations, which we've brought in as a province. We were able to index ACE rates by 4.25%. And so that number reflects what we believe will be case growth and the need to be able to fulfill that indexation number and continue forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the Minister, if he has any closing remarks, he may take them.
Just thank you for the questions.
Thank you so much, Minister. Now we will move over to the government side for their questions. Please proceed, members.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that, I would like to thank Minister and his team for the amazing work you have been doing on this file and for our province, and especially, you know, I think you've known and your family and your parents for helping the most vulnerable people in our province. So that's very honorable, and it's heartfelt to have you on this file and working diligently to support the most vulnerable in our
Thank you
province.
so much, Member. And are you going back and forth just to confirm, or is this going to be block time?
Sure, we can go back and forth.
Minister?
And I will be promised to let you finish up and learn from your answers rather than interrupting. So with that, we understand, Minister, that Navigation and Support Center in Edmonton is doing excellent work to support the most vulnerable people in the city. Can the Minister, through the Chair, please provide a breakdown of what services are available at the Navigation Center and how many people have been provided with those services up to date, if we can?
Well, I appreciate the question, and during the break, Madam Chair, we were able to get the latest numbers from the Navigation Center. So 630 people have accessed Edmonton's Navigation Support Center since it started 2 months ago. Over 2,200 referrals and direct connections to services have been made for those individuals. Over 200 individuals have been referred to housing programs. Almost 300 other people have been connected to either emergency shelter and or transitional housing. So almost 500 to some type of housing beyond a tent. Last night in Edmonton, over 1,400 individuals slept in shelters for 89% of the capacity of that shelter system. And I think what is the most promising statistic that we see across the system is that approximately 92% of Albertans who have received housing with supports have remained in stable housing, showing that that is working very well. The other supports that you see in the Navigation Center are healthcare, obviously addiction and mental health care, making sure that people have access to both income supports. And then there's other things like, again, access to ID. One of the things that we learned when we set up the Navigation Center was the biggest challenge is individuals are coming in with no ID, and then we can't connect them to other services. You also see stuff like access to prescriptions and other aspects that individuals may need. There's also the ability to be able to sleep on site. Sometimes as individuals are coming straight in from encampments, they may not be ready to deal with some of the big conversations that would take place and need a little bit of time to rest. And obviously to be able to shower and ultimately be in a warm spot as you look at ways that you can be able to interact with the social services system.
Thank you very much for the prompt answer here and the update on information. My next question, if I may, would be related to affordability and inflation. Thank you for coming out and visiting my riding. I have an absolutely amazing, beautiful riding of Drayton Valley, Devon. And in fact, last couple months, I had an opportunity, in fact, throughout the whole year, I had an opportunity to visit, people with needs, severely handicapped on age. And I had an opportunity to visit as well seniors' home, pretty much all of them in my riding. And we have quite a few of them as people would love to retire outside of the busy cities into rural settings, providing that they have a good support and access to healthcare. And there's one particular lady that stood up, and she's turning 98 this April. Wow. Yes, her name is Kay. And talking to her, her concern was the inflation that we have, and I'm glad to see that in your report we have addressed that. So I'll read my question to you, and if we can maybe provide and concentrate a little bit on affordability, inflation, and indexing of the inflation. So indexing social support like AISH, assured income for the severely handicapped, income support, and the seniors benefit to inflation was such an important change for the government, and thank you for that. Both my constituents and I were very, very pleased to see that indexing of this support after our government fixed the fiscal mess left by the members opposite here during their time in government. Looking specifically at the page 123 of your business plan, the first bullet under initiative supporting key objective states in 2024, 2025, at $2.7 billion, and yes, I say billion, not million here, so this is huge, which includes indexing for the inflation, is allocated to insured income for the severely handicapped, income support, and seniors benefit. So my question, Minister, would be, my first question, and then I'll follow up with some others. Can you, through the Speaker, Madam Chair, please break down the $2.7 billion by each benefit?
I can, and the chair would make a great speaker as well, but she's doing a good job being chair right now, so we will stick with that for the moment. The breakdown is as follows: income support, $595 million, AISH, $1.6 billion, special needs assistance grants, $15 million, Alberta senior benefit grants, $390 million, and supplementary accommodation benefit, $111 million.
Thank you. Also, indexing these benefits to inflation was the right thing to do for our seniors and the vulnerable, especially as Albertans continue to see rising costs of everyday things like grocery, gas, and many, many other everyday items that we need for our survival here and living. At the same time, I'm assuming this added significant operating cost to the minister's budget. So the question is, can the minister, through the chair, please provide us with how much the government has invested in indexing this support to inflation?
Well, for those programs, Madam Chair, we've increased by almost $112 million from 2023 for the 2023-24 budget. Those funds are going primarily to both caseload and continue to index benefit rates to help, obviously, the most in need keep up with the rising cost. I would also point out, Madam Chair, it's also part of that overall $5.1 billion investment the government is doing overall to be able to invest in helping with the affordability crisis.
Thank you. Now I would like to talk a little bit more about AISH, assured income for the severely handicapped. It is a deeply important program providing needed support for Albertans with permanent medical condition that prevents them from earning a living. So I have series of questions. I can either go one by one or read out all of them, or
whatever's easiest for you. Whatever's easiest for the member.
Okay, let's go one by one. How was the 2024 indexing rate established?
Well, indexing is done based on a year-over-year change to the Alberta Consumer Price Index, which is obtained by comparing the cost of a fixed basket of goods and services purchased by the customer over a 12-month period from October 2022 to September 2023. The indexing methodology is set out in the AISH Act and regulation that's been passed by the legislature. Benefit rates vary depending on Albertans' needs, household composition, and other factors. But examples of a monthly benefit changes for January 1st, 2024 would be as follows. Going from $1,787 to $1,863 for AISH, $790 a month to $824 a month for income support expected to work, $919 to $959 a month for income support barriers to full employment, and then $303 to $316 for the Alberta Senior Benefit. One thing to point out on the Alberta Senior Benefit is that's not CPP, which is handled by the federal government. This is supplementary to other pension benefits that seniors may be receiving.
Thank you so much. Now the next question would be, how does Alberta's AISH program compares to similar programs in other provinces throughout Canada?
Well, I mean, two key things when it comes to our ACE program. First is that we have the highest benefits in the country. And then second, we also have the highest ability for individuals on ACE to be able to earn income before we have clawbacks to the ACE program. And those are probably the two biggest things that make our program stand out. There's not exactly a full comparable program to ACE anywhere else in the country as well. But when you go and look at what other provinces have done, it's pretty clear that we stand out.
Thank you again. And then other question would be, we see that there is a payment date was changed. Would you expand on why that payment date was changed?
Well, we were, after consultation, when I came into the ministry with stakeholders, it became clear that there was a desire to change that date, and that ultimately it would make things easier for everybody involved. It would prevent unnecessary late fines for individuals who count on ACE every month to be able to pay their bills. And so we made that change. It had no impact on the budget. So after hearing from stakeholders, the importance of that, it was something that I thought that we should do, and therefore instructed the department to do so.
Okay, and the next similar question would be, how will this change impact Albertans receiving benefits from this program?
Well, I think the biggest thing it does is alleviate, as I said, pressure on those individuals who rely on those benefits every month, to be able to get their bills paid on time. So a couple days earlier coming into their bank accounts, it lets them meet particularly big monthly obligations like rent and other reoccurring expenses like that in a timely manner. What we were hearing was with the 4 days later, it was impacting individuals, particularly with late charges. And so I think that is the biggest benefit. And again, it came at no cost to the taxpayer.
So it's a huge positive impact. Next question would be on the integrity of the program. Okay, what approaches and processes are used to ensure that Albertans are receiving the benefits that they are entitled to?
Well, we have different information sharing agreements across government, and we conduct regular data matches against various sources. Stuff like the Canadian Pension Plan, CRA, the provincial data sources, maintenance enforcement program would be some of the big examples to identify and validate changes in client circumstances. There's also a process for public reporting of suspected fraud and program abuse. We also streamline processes for benefit program staff to refer cases of suspected fraud and program abuse to the investigation unit for investigation and action. We have some work underway right now where we're implementing digital identity verification processes, automated processes to validate Alberta's driver's licenses and Alberta identification cards to detect forged or falsified identification. We're also implementing a Canada Revenue Agency lookup tool to verify income support applications and clients. We're automating potential fraud flags for staff to review and then ultimately to take action on, and establishing ongoing cross matches of clients receiving duplicate student aid and foundational learning assistance.
And that was actually answering my other question on the file reviews. So thank you for touching on that as well. I'll skip that question. Next, I would like to go and talk a little bit about the food security, because with affordability, inflation rates, and we also need to talk about the food security with our most vulnerable in our province. And on the topic of the rising prices, food security is a growing concern for Albertans, especially those on fixed incomes. I'm sure the minister is in the same boat when I say that we see the rising prices at the grocery store. We hear from constituents about the challenges that these rising prices create for them and their families. And we also hear about more people needing to access food banks. This is something that weighs in heavily on people's mind and something that weighs heavily on my heart and hearts of many Albertans in our province. No one wants to wonder about how they are going to put food on the table or whether they are able to pack lunch for school or work for the week to come. So I see on the page 123 of your business plan that your ministry is providing a $5 million in funding to community organizations that support food security in our province. So, Minister, can you outline what are the $5 million goes towards, specifically including examples of organization, and if we can receive what kind of type of funding did we receive to specific organization?
So when the last budget year was the first time that the department really got into working with food banks. In the past, it's actually not been asked for, frankly, by food banks. But obviously, the changing times and the circumstance we see both with inflation and affordability crisis has caused the government to go in and see areas where they can help with food stability. We've done a lot of that through our work with Alberta food banks, and what we've learned from that process over the last year, I think, is going to reflect on some of the decisions that we'll make in the future. Well, one thing that we did learn is that we're not the body that should be going out and buying food. We don't have the same buying power and resources and access to the industry that's an organization like Alberta Food Banks would have. And so we have invested, for example, $2.2 million to fund Food Banks Alberta in a partnership with them so that they can redistribute donated food throughout the province, help food banks maintain their supply of high demand food items, offer bulk purchasing and transportation subsidies to help Albertans in need to get that bulk food there. They're working with their 120 member food banks across the province, and we are also working with Food Banks Alberta to make sure plans are in place to support communities during times such as emergency events like wildfires and floods. So we've also identified a need to do specific work on that given the amount of emergencies that we've been seeing in the province. And that ends up being a unique need that we end up having to work with when people are evacuating. Our focus when it comes to funding associated with food banks at their request, particularly through the work that we've done with Food Banks Alberta, is to focus on helping them build capacity and to be able to maximize the abilities that they have rather than becoming the food purchaser. And we're gonna evaluate how well the program went the last year and make any adjustments in partnership with them going forward so we can, again, help them continue to do the great work that they do.
Thank you, Minister, and your ministry for being proactive on this file and supporting the programs with $5 million. Would the Minister, through the Chair, provide us with any of the key metrics for the measuring of the success of this funding, as well as are there any target that go along with it?
Yeah, grant agreements establish metrics such as the number of member food banks that were supported through the year, the volume of food that is distributed throughout the province, the ability to balance business needs with those of the very people that they are helping. Our goal ultimately, though, as I said, is to work with Food Banks Alberta to ensure Alberta's network of food banks have the support they need to ensure Albertans in need can put food on their tables. And so a lot of the focus of the department right now is helping those organizations build capacity and be able to work together in a collaborative way, particularly when it comes to buying power. Because if we work with all of them together, we end up being able to purchase a lot more food and be able to have a bigger impact across the province.
Thank you very much, Minister. I also have heard from the Edmonton food banks and people that are visiting there as well, that there was a huge support to some specific food banks, in the city, in Calgary, and there were a lot of response that they were extremely happy with that support. So overall, one more time, if this program or the support of $5 million is successful, what are your plans for future, given the success of this program?
Our plan as we look at food security over the next year is we're going to take a little bit of time with the industry to evaluate what worked and what did not work with this first rounds of funding as we've entered into this program space. And we'll work with them to be able to make sure that what we come forward with for this year will create a benefit to the overall food bank industry. But in particular, our focus will be about capacity building and making sure that we can empower, help food banks overcome any type of hurdle that they may be having to provide to the community. The other area where I've instructed the department to spend some time on is where there are unique food needs. So different aspects of the province where there may be a need to put some investment to culturally appropriate foods for those neighborhoods or those communities, or to be able to access parts of our communities in the province that may not be getting access to traditional food banks. and figuring out a way that we help our existing food banks be able to get to that targeted group of individuals that may need help. But, you know, as the MLA for Lacombe-Pinoca was asking in her segment about nonprofits, this is a big area that, again, illustrates where we really count on our social services sector to help us deliver. And the food bank sector has done an amazing job for decades inside our province because of the support of Albertans who continue to support those organizations. And we want to come in and just be able to continue to empower them to do the work that they're doing and be able to make sure that our resources are going into areas where there may be holes within the system that they need help with.
Okay, thank you. I actually do have another question, but I probably wouldn't have a time to go into my next question here, given that we only have 15 seconds left. But it gives me opportunity to go back to my constituents, and specifically to Kay, who's turning 98 this April, to say that I've been able to talk and thank personally Minister for the great job and work you've done in this ministry. Thank you very much.
We'll say happy birthday to your constituent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, member. That concludes this section of the government's time. Now, members, we do not have a deputy chair, and a substitution notice has not been provided. And I have just consumed this giant container of gluten-free hot chocolate, so I need to take another bio break. So we will need to just pause for 5 minutes. So please take another break, and I will be right back. So, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much. We have a new member who's joined us from the official opposition. Please introduce yourself.
Najwan Al-Junaid, Calgary Glamour.
Thank you so much. So let's continue on with questions from the official opposition. Please go ahead, members. And do you prefer block time or do you want to block time?
Yes,
Sure, let's
great.
proceed.
Thanks so much. So I'd like to speak to page 123 of the business plan, key objective 1.5, creating a strategy for attainable and affordable housing based on middle and low income renters and buyers. This plan notes 86.6 million to provide rent assistance for Albertans in need through the rent supplement program. 86.6 million in rent and supplements sounds like a decent number, but in fact it's incredibly low in that we see an increase of only 550 supplements this entire year, and that's not even close to what's needed to make a dent on the wait lists in Edmonton alone. And we're not just talking about the big cities here, it's an issue across Alberta. Just one example, Canmore Community Housing reports 219 people are on a wait list for its rental program. So my first question through the chair to the minister is, adding only 550 is a dramatic decrease in the amounts that they've been adding over the past few years. So I would like to ask the minister to walk us through his rationale as to why only 550 new rent supplements are being added. Page 86 of the fiscal plan notes that the funding for the 550 new supplements will also address cost pressures in the rental assistance program arising from increases in market rents. Again, it's clear, as I noted earlier, this government is acknowledging the increases in market rents, the highest increasing rents across all of Canada happening in Edmonton and Calgary, in fact, but their offering is a mere 550 additional rent supplements. Why? I'd also like the minister to break down that 550. How many will go to each housing management body? How many are for RAB and how many are for TRAB? I have a lot of concerns about the wait lists, as I mentioned earlier. Could the minister outline for us how many Albertans are on the subsidy wait list? We know that from Stronger Foundations, there were more than 24,000 households waiting for suitable subsidized accommodation, and we can only imagine that that number has dramatically increased. So what is today's wait list number for rent supplements? The target noted in Stronger Foundations is to reduce the number of households on a wait list by 30%, and that's found on page 22. So has that wait list been reduced? Has it grown? What is the wait list number for affordable housing as well? And of course, that's directly linked to objective 1.4 in the business plan on page 123. And for those folks waiting, we've heard from so many in my office, and I know my colleagues as well have heard the same concerns. For those folks waiting on the wait list, what supports are available to them now? I'd also like to ask the minister to break down the number that he's provided. He has mentioned multiple times that he is spending $250 million on rent supplements, providing tens of thousands of households for Albertans. That's a direct quote from his press conference on March 7th in Lethbridge. I cannot arrive at $250 million for rent supplements alone, no matter how I slice the numbers. The reality is that around 86 million is going to rent supplements, and there's around 12,000 households getting the supplements, not tens of thousands. Again, page 123 of the business plan. So can the minister outline how he's arrived at the 250 million, $250 million number? I'd really like the minister to rationalize how he could not push for a significant increase in the number of rent supplements. He's not willing to consider rent caps. So what is he going to do in the immediate to support renters grappling with these skyrocketing rent increases? What measures can he point me to in the budget that will support those renters who are struggling and at risk of losing their homes now? We also know that this is the same UCP government that slashed the rent supplement program by 24%, 44 million in their first budget in 2019. This meant that Albertans did not have access to that funding when they needed it. And of course, it had rippling impacts during the pandemic when so many Albertans were struggling financially. As well, we can see on page 77 of the most recent annual report that between 2001 and 2021, the number of households in Alberta increased from over 1.5 million to over 1.6 million, a 7% increase, whereas the number of households in core housing need decreased, about a 5% decrease. Given the rate of inflation in Canada and the termination of the CERB program, the number of households in core housing needs is expected to increase again. This government has mentioned that they're going to try to address core housing need, but my question for the minister is if his own budget documents point out that he could anticipate an increase in core housing need, why would he not significantly increase rent supplements? And even I can point to key stakeholders like Alberta municipalities who are critical of this decision, noting that this budget will leave over 60% of households in core housing need without any supports whatsoever. I'm out of time here, but I'd very much like the minister to rationalize his decisions on rent supplements and what he's going to do in the immediate to support struggling renters across Alberta who are at risk of losing their homes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Honourable Member, we'll turn it over now to the Minister to provide some answers.
Madam Chair, only the NDP would call $86 million of Alberta's taxpayer dollars nothing, but I digress.
Please turn my microphone on. Please turn my microphone on. Honourable Member, when the Minister is giving answers, if you would kindly not heckle, I need to be able to hear the Minister's response. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'll address the Honourable Member's questions. First off, I will address the $250 million number because that's the simplest. That's a 3-year number. And that is what we're referring to when we say that. We are investing in rent assistance significantly, $87 million this year, increasing households. I want to be clear, when we say households, that's not just one person. There's more than one individual who lives in households. And so it has a significant impact on more than just the one person, obviously, who would go and live inside those units. We are allocating in budget 2024-25 just over $250 million has been allocated to operate government-supported affordable housing programs, which does include that $86.6 million to provide rent assistance to Albertans in need through the rent supplement programs. We remain committed to the rent supplement programs. I do want to be clear, though, Madam Chair, that that has limited capacity, and we are close to what that capacity can accomplish. The reality is that we have a supply problem in our market. And unfortunately, we saw underneath the former government a lack of effort to build up that supply, which is why you saw affordable housing wait list increase underneath the NDP by, I believe, 76%. And you see underneath our government that wait list numbers have decreased by over 25%. The Honourable Member asked a question about the wait list. It's dropped from 24,500 to 18,500. And will continue to do so with the effort that we are putting in place to address this issue. I want to point out that sharp contrast, a 25% decrease underneath the Conservative government, whereas underneath an NDP government, waitlist went up by 76% to receive affordable housing. Now, there is a capacity, though, when it comes to rent supplements. At some point, you still have to make sure that you have enough units for everybody to live in to supplement, which is why the effort is about supply. And I know this is something that the NDP have had trouble understanding. A lot of it, I think, is to do with their distaste of business or anything free enterprise. But the way forward to get everybody the home that they need is we need to build them, which is why you see efforts taking place on both the affordable and the attainable side going forward to be able to make sure that we are able to accomplish that. So that's why you have an investment in budget 2024 to support 7,000 more households, 5,100 more capital builds, and 1,900 rent supplements to deal with all of those levers that we have to be able to help the supportive housing industry be able to survive through the process that we have to undergo. But the real work that is going to change that capacity, so we would have rental units that we could supplement, that we will have homes that people can buy, and that will stabilize the market, is around the incredible work that's taking place in this province when it comes to market housing, which is significant. You see the work that has already taken place by the government or that is being legislated as we speak is creating a way for industry to be able to create almost 60,000, 50-some thousand more houses than they would have been able to complete over the next several years because of that work. There's 16,000 purpose-built rentals already started within industry right now taking place in the province. We have the most purpose-built rentals ever being built. In fact, right the last 3 years on purpose-built rentals is the equivalent to the 15 years before that. And as that comes on the market, you'll see rent stabilize and you'll see the situation get significantly better. Now, the other, with the last minute that I have left, the member asked about what other benefits there are for people that are experiencing stress when it comes to paying for their daily bills. Well, first is this, is that we have a $5.5 billion budget, with almost 90% of it going to vulnerable Albertans that are in need directly and or to organizations that support them directly to be able to make sure that you're able to help deal with everything from income support, AISH, disability payments, senior payments, all of that being indexed to make sure that Albertans can face that those challenges as they go forward. I will say this, the other thing we hear from the social services sector is the drastic impact that the NDP Liberal carbon tax is having on that social services sector. And if the honourable member would actually like to help this sector, the most important thing that she could do is join the other half of the legislature who continues to call on Mr. Singh and Mr. Trudeau and the majority of premiers in the country to remove the damaging carbon tax, which is making things very, very, very unaffordable for Albertans each and every day. And that is the number one thing we could do tomorrow to make life more affordable.
Thank you so much, Minister. We'll move back over to the official opposition for their next block of questions. Sorry, it's now, government side, yes. Please proceed, members.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for answering all these important questions. I would like to just go back to the AISH overall budget here for a few questions, if you don't mind. On page 123 of the ministry business plan, says that 2.7 billion has been allotted to support programs such as AISH, income support, and seniors benefits. My first question is the budget increase for AISH sufficient to meet the needs of the rising number of clients on the AISH program?
Well, it's a great question. Thank you, the honourable member, for it. Just to provide some context, the AISH budget itself is about 1.6 billion, which is an increase of 108.2 million from last year, and it's starting with the January 2024 payment. Our clients are seeing their monthly financial benefits increase by 4.25% to reflect the increased cost of living and our commitment to indexation of AISH. The AISH program is a legislated program, which means it will remain fully funded and available to all eligible Albertans. We are very confident in our projections when it comes to AISH based on the forecast that we're seeing, that we'll be able to meet our obligations with the budget that we're presenting to the legislature. But to be clear, it's also a legislative obligation, so we will meet it.
Right. Thank you. And then I have a question around assessment. Is the assessment of AISH applications being delayed?
No, the assessment of AISH applications are not being delayed. Again, this is a statutory program. We have an obligation to run that assessment process and make sure that it's working. There will always be reviews done by the department. For some of the questions that the previous member asked about making sure that the program is, its integrity is upheld, that we're watching for things like fraud. We're reviewing timelines, so the ability and resources the staff may need to be able to meet our statutory obligations when it comes to AISH. Our standard process that will continue, but the department has received clear instructions to continue to do the important work that AISH is doing. And I would say, Madam Chair, that the significant investment by Albertans in this budget for this important program reflects that desire and that commitment by the Alberta government to continue with this program.
Okay. And so further to that, how long does it take to assess and process an application?
Well, it's interesting. Underneath the previous NDP administration, the average processing time for AISH applications at the end of their term was 32.7 weeks. From October to December 2023, the latest complete quarter that I have, the average processing time was 25.9 weeks, so almost 2 months faster. We care about this issue. We understand the need to be able to process AISH applications as efficiently as possible. We also, at the same time, understand the need that it has to be done right. This is, I think the number is roughly $1 million on average for every individual over their lifetime when we put them on AISH. And so we have an obligation to the taxpayer and to the integrity of the program, the people that count on the program, to make sure that we're making these decisions underneath the requirements that have been set out by both legislation and regulation. But clearly there's been significant investments by the department to speed up that timeline, which is why you're seeing 2 months faster, and we're going to continue to encourage the department in that important work.
Wonderful. Thank you for that important work on just reducing the wait lines and timelines on that. Would like to now switch over to some of the housing questions here on page 126 of the business plan. we see more than 1.5 billion in investments to the Alberta Social Housing Corporation over the next 3 years. Last year, we saw just over $1 billion on the same line. Why is this government so committed to making affordable housing more accessible, and what are the outcomes anticipated with these measures?
Well, first off, just to summarize those numbers, in this budget, we have a line item that includes $719 million in capital funding and $6.8 million operating funding, and $121 million in capital maintenance and renewal dollars over the next 3 years. That is to show the commitment to our Stronger Foundations plan, which ultimately is going to support a total of 82,000 more low-income households by 2031, which is an increase of more than 40% compared to 2021. And of the additional 25,000 households that will be served under that Stronger Foundations plan and affordable housing strategy, around 13,000 units will be through new supply and 12,000 through rental supplements. And so this investment in the budget shows that we understand that we have to invest in both affordable and attainable housing, as we've talked about a lot today, but it shows that we have a commitment to fulfilling that Stronger Foundations plan. The other thing I will say is that it also shows that we've really heard from our nonprofit, particular housing authority partners and municipalities, that there's a need to invest in both rent supplements and new builds, but also a need to invest in capital maintenance and renewal dollars that have been sorely lacking because of different financial pressures for the government. And I know they're excited to see the investment that we had in 2023-24, and that will continue in 24-25, because what we've recognized is, one, that we need to do it and maintain those buildings, but second, that's some of the fastest units that we can put back online compared to new builds, which is why we're investing in all of those levers.
Great. So you just answered some of the projects that were in process. So can we expect to see the same with this new funding?
Yes. You know, we're working to support about 7,000 more households by funding rent assistance and construction of more housing units. The capital plan itself includes $696.3 million of the $719 million over 3 years to support the implementation of the Stronger Foundations plan alone. That strategy, when implementing that capital funding, will be over 3 years, which would be $135 in this year, $250 million in the following year, and just over $303 million in 2026. I want to stress about 7,000 new households will be served as a result of that investment, 5,100 through capital investments and 1,900 through rent supplements.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I have another set of questions here. On page 123 of the business plan, key objectives 1.4 is to continue to implement Stronger Foundations. Alberta has a 10-year strategy to address affordable housing across the province. Alberta's government launched this strategy in November of 2021. What has the government accomplished under the Stronger Foundations strategy since it's been launched?
Well, and I'm going to supplement the end of that question with some of the new stuff that we've had to add on to that strategy since we have got into the fiscal situation and the inflationary situation that we've seen, which is different than when the Stronger Foundations was originally put forward. That said, we're still committed to it and beyond. Some of the stuff that we've seen is a completion of 1,361 new affordable housing units since November 2021. A development and commencement of the implementation of the Affordable Housing Asset Management Framework and Partnership Program. We also redesigned the Rent Supplement Program. We maximized federal funding. We launched the Finding Housing Online tool. We launched the Seniors Lodge Program review, which is taking place right now. And we're working with the housing providers, municipalities, and other partners to come up with innovative, nuanced solutions. I referred to some of them just a moment ago when I talked about capital maintenance and renewal dollars. We increased that budget in the last fiscal year, have maintained that going into this year, and we challenged our housing partners to go find units that were either offline or about to be offline to make sure that we invested in stabilizing those dollars. And we have focused that investment on those type of innovative solutions. We're going to continue to do that. I think what has changed since the Stronger Foundations plan that has been an add-on because of the housing crisis that we see that's been created by both the federal government and global pressures is the department also doing significant work with our cross-ministerial partners to be able to make sure industry can be able to meet that obligation. When the Strongest Foundation plan was completed, I think we were short, according to CMHC, somewhere around 20,000 houses. Right now, we're going to need to build about another 100 to 150,000 houses, depending on which projections that you want to go with. And so that has shown us the real need to be able to invest in other things like red tape and other components to be able to help the industry. And I'm really happy to report that they're indicating to us at this moment that they can build well over 50,000 more units as a result of just us doing that.
I think you answered maybe part of my next question, but how will 2024, the 2024 budget ensure that continued success of this strategy? Is there anything else that you would like to add to that?
Well, we're gonna continue to be focused on demand, making sure that we are working on both affordable and attainable supply, and making sure that our construction industry, which is also building our affordable housing, is able to do the work that they need to do. Continue to partner with our nonprofit and municipal partners to find shovel-ready projects to get everything moving. I also want to point out that we're also putting a lot of effort as we come into 2024 to work on Indigenous housing, both with off reserve, obviously, which we have an obligation on, and to work with our Indigenous partners to push the federal government to actually uphold the responsibility on reserve, which we are seeing our First Nation partners really struggle to receive appropriate funding from the federal government. So those will be some of the things that we'll be working on this fiscal year.
Thank you so much, Minister, for that response. We'll move over to the official opposition for the next block.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to start by thanking the public service who worked hard to deliver this budget for Albertans and to advise the minister, so thank you for all the hard work. My first question is on the expansion of the Alberta Gold Seniors Building, which is home to around 60 residents in the heart of my beautiful riding, Calgary-Glenmore. I've been engaging with leaders from the Paperny family JCC in Calgary-Glenmore. These leaders want to expand the senior facility, and they have shared with me the importance of an individual's ability to age in place. The JCC's ambitions are aligned with your ministry's objective 3.2 to support Albertans to age well at home and collaborate with community-based seniors serving organizations. The goal of this expansion is to future-proof the building, which means the suites can be modified to accommodate seniors of all needs, but also can be repurposed if needed to support student housing, general housing, and more. The former Minister of Seniors, the member from Edmonton Riverview, had granted funding for the JCC to conduct a needs assessment study. This needs assessment is reflected in this expansion project and was priced at $75 million years ago. To be clear, this is a provincial building on the JCC property. Through you, Madam Chair, what is the minister's plan to support this much-needed project to add more senior and affordable housing in Calgary-Glenmore? Is it shovel-ready by your description earlier? This facility would serve all surrounding community members in Calgary-Glenmore, including a 30% Jewish population in the riding. The JCC's supplemental programming covers up to 200 new suites and maybe more depending on the zoning conditions. The JCC plans to include a new school, a daycare, and a cultural area.
Point of order has been called. Please proceed, member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The point of order is under Standing Order 23B. The member speaks to the matters other than the question under discussion. The said program, which the honourable member is describing, is not part of our ministry's 2024 budget, including estimates, fiscal plan, and business plan. The matter that has been raised by the honourable member is not within the boundaries of the said topics. Thank you, Madam Chair.
This is not a point of order. As I was listening to my colleague, she cited business plan objective 3.2, and in budget estimates going forward, I've always found it to be in order to ask about items that are in the budget and items that maybe we can't find, asking the minister to identify where that might be included. I don't believe this is a point of order. I believe this is directly within the ministry's mandate and worthy of discussion.
Thank you so much, members. So I don't find this to be a point of order at the moment, but it'll be up to the minister to decide how he chooses to answer. So let's proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So where is your ministry at in reviewing this project? Does it exist? How do you plan to support such multi-purpose and culturally competent housing project in Calgary-Glenmore? Now, I'd like to continue with the theme of support for seniors and support for renters across Alberta as in your ministry's objectives 1.1 and 1.5. I recently attended a meeting with tenants from Glenmore Gardens and Ilata complexes as they discussed their concerns with the regional vice president of Avenue Living. Tenants in this complex have faced drastic rent increases. Some renters have faced 60% increase of what they were paying before. Calgary Glenmore is home to more than 10,000 seniors, and many are currently struggling to keep up with the rising cost of living and out-of-control rent increases. The Glenmore Gardens and Ilata complexes are home to more than 400 families, with 60% of individuals being seniors. My constituents have shared impact statements, and I'd like to read them to you. Quote, "I am desperate. They raised my rent $400, so I will have to move." Another one, "It feels inhumane. It feels criminal. It lacks compassion and empathy, and these big companies should use some of their profits to make sure this doesn't happen to people." Another one from a disabled senior couple on fixed income. "Because of the increases," unquote here, "because of the increases coming upwards of $700, this isn't a reality. We thought this would be our forever place. My husband had to go back to work, and I'm looking for work and can only do certain things due to a disability." So what is your ministry's plan to provide immediate relief to these people? How are you going to help these seniors with disabilities on fixed income right away? We know that there's a recent report by the National Institute of Aging shows that approximately 41% of Canadians aged 50 or older are at risk of social isolation, and up to 58% in that age group have experienced loneliness. This alarming statistic highlights the need for policies directed at building communities around our seniors in Alberta. We know that they prefer to age in place, surrounded with their communities, with people they know, with their families, and closer to all their connections in the riding. So I would appreciate answers to these questions. Thank you.
Now, this is block time. Did you have anything else to add? No? No? Okay, fantastic. We'll just move over to the minister now for his response.
We'll start with 3.2. The member seems to be referring to capital investment, which is nothing to do with 3.2. I won't be able to speak specifically to a project interconstituency, but I did check with officials. We're not aware. We can't guarantee it without leaving the room to double check, but we don't think that project's actually applied to us for funding. So I would, we would encourage you maybe to reach out to that stakeholder, and if they are interested in working on a housing project with us, the department would be happy to have a conversation with them about what that process would look like, both provincially and federally. We could be wrong about the double check when we come out here, but nobody from the public service is aware of that project applying, just so you know. Your question, though, is about 3.2, supporting Albertans to age well at home and in their community by collaborating with community-based senior service organizations, health and other sectors, and all orders of government. While that certainly would be collaborating on capital projects, which we deal with in other aspects of the budget, it also remains a priority overall to make sure that we work with our providers to be able to make sure that we can work with our closely with community partners and particularly Healthy Aging Alberta, where we have a collective of community-based senior services organizations that ultimately deliver non-medical home supports to older adults and assisted transportation services, for example, for seniors and persons with mobility challenges in rural Alberta. We also have spent a lot of time today talking about some of the action that we've been putting in place to prevent elder abuse in Alberta by working closely with other community partners, which includes the Alberta Abuse Awareness Campaign, supporting community organizations to develop resources for diverse communities, undertaking a new elder abuse prevalence study, and funding community supports for seniors experiencing abuse. Supports for seniors experiencing abuse includes funding over the next 3 years, as I said, for shelters in both Edmonton and Calgary, as well as working closely with us on our new Safe Spaces program for rural Alberta, where we can use existing lodge space to help seniors who may find themselves in that type of a spot. We also continue to collaborate closely with the private sector and the research community, as well as civil society organizations, to develop innovative solutions to address the needs of caregivers themselves and to explore how technology can be leveraged to address the needs needs of an aging population and enhancing workforces in senior services sectors, which is the work that we're doing on the item that you referred to. I do know that you brought up some specific issues that may be happening with some of your constituents who are on AISH. If I understood it right, I just want to be clear, if I did understand it right, the department would be happy to talk with them. And if you could reach out to our office, we'd be happy to connect that constituent with our AISH division, because we do have some other resources that may be available to them in the circumstances that I think I heard you describing, though this is probably an inappropriate spot to try to do full case management. In regards to what we're doing on the overall seniors investment in housing, we've captured that a lot already here today, in that within that law, that affordable housing investment that we talk about, the large amounts of that go towards seniors housing projects, both on capital side and on our overall on our lodge program side. And one of the things that we are also doing right now is we are doing a lodge review led by the honorable member for Leduc, who I know is a member of this community right now, where he is working with stakeholders, a large amount of stakeholders, as they travel around the province to overall look at our lodge program, which is our oldest affordable housing program in the province, and to look at some of the changes where we need to modernize our lodge program to be able to address things like new ways to develop lodges. But that could both be a physical capacity issue of lodges, room sizes, different ways that individuals want to experience those lodges, but also about how those lodges interact with two very important areas. One is the community as a whole, to be able to provide other services within those lodge processes to help seniors age healthy in place, but also the connections that we have to healthcare, to continuing care. And so we're looking forward to seeing the report come back so that we can then begin to implement some of those changes. Lastly, I will discuss your rent concerns. The organizations that you mentioned, there are private companies. They are not funded by our department. Those are private providers and are not within our affordable housing programs. If there are specifics about what rent rules are, and there are in this province, that's actually not managed by the Department of Seniors, Community and Social Services. It's actually managed by the Minister of Red Tape and Service, Alberta, who has put in when rents can be increased, when rents can't be increased, and what those processes look for as far as regulating landlords and tenant relationship. That actually is not managed by Seniors, Community and Social Services. It's actually managed by Service Alberta. And I know Minister Nally would be happy to provide you some details in regards to that. I also do know that he just passed, either last cycle or this cycle, early, some new rules around when rents can be increased that you might be interested in.
Thank you so much, member. Minister, we'll head over to the government members. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Minister, and thank you, Minister. I appreciate the efforts and commitment made by the ministry. I'm pleased that Budget 2024 aims to help elders, families, and communities, and Albertans access disability services, financial assistance, and other social-based initiatives. And my question is on page 123, key objective 1.5 is to create a strategy for attainable and affordable housing focused on middle and low-income renters and buyers. And what data do you have on the need of this new strategy, and what progress has the ministry made to date to this strategy?
Well, thank you through the chair to the honorable member for the question. I think it's an important question. We have to recognize, I was alluding to this earlier, that our Stronger Foundations plan is something we remain committed to, but we recognize that there's been some changes to both the economy and particularly around what we're seeing as far as population growth. Our population increased with an influx of 194,000 people between October 2022 and October 2023, which adds some new context to the work that we're trying to do when it comes to affordable housing strategy, the Stronger Foundation strategy, I should say. It doesn't change the fundamentals of that strategy, but it does certainly change some of the demands that we're seeing as a result of that. I think it's important to note that fortunately we're still seeing the fact that our market still remains the most affordable market in the country, particularly when it comes to large cities. But what's clear is if we don't take action, we could end up in spots like Toronto and Vancouver. I would also say if we don't take action, or if we take the wrong action, we could also end up like Toronto and Vancouver, who have tried to do things like rent control, which has not worked, and we see skyrocketing rent as a result of that. the changes also that I think is really stands out is that CMHC was projecting, I believe, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I believe around when the Stronger Foundations plan was being built, about us being short about 20,000, maybe 25,000 houses. We now have projections now that by 2031 or 2030, I should say, that we could be short as much as 150,000 houses. So that's required us to make some adjustments to the plan. We still continue, though, to be focused on investing inside or investing in affordable housing to deal with the affordable housing challenges that we see in the demographics that have to live within those housing type of projects, which is in this budget, again, an $840 million capital investment is pretty significant. But it's why we have also added to this process significant investments in both legislation and time to be able to make sure that we create a way where our industry can get us to that 150,000 houses, because the bulk of those houses must come from industry and they must come from the market. But it's not enough that they just build the houses. If we end up with the same traditional houses, we're going to not end up in a spot where we actually deal with affordability, which is why we've also worked with our cities to be able to deal with zoning laws and different circumstances to be able to help more purpose-built rentals be built. And I think we should be pretty excited because it appears that it is working. Right now, there's 16,000 new rental units started in the province at the moment. January was a record month for housing starts. February was another record month for housing starts. And our industry has indicated to us that they think they can create upwards of another 50,000 plus houses as a result of those red tape reductions. So we have it on the right trajectory, and we have to continue to be able to make sure that we can foster that.
Thank you, Minister, for the answer, and thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister. Minister, as you know, the Seniors Lodge program is very important to Calgary East and all of Alberta. For many seniors in Alberta, especially for those in rural communities, playing a critical role in helping to ensure seniors can age in their community. Our key objective 1.6 on page 123 of the business plan is to review the Seniors Lodge program to ensure it meets the needs of the communities and seniors. And I understand, Minister, launched the review by appointing a panel in January. Can the Minister please tell us about the work of the panel and what are the next steps and how does it tie into the budget 2024?
Yes, Madam Chair, we did launch a panel review in January 2024. As mentioned, it's actually chaired by the Honourable Member for Leduc, who I know is here today, as well as co-chaired by Arlene Adamson, who is the President of Alberta Seniors and Community Housing Association, who represents our senior housing providers across the province, which brings together a lot of key stakeholders to be able to look at some of the challenges that we face as representation from all across the province, including municipalities and other organizations that are our partners along the way when it comes to our lodge program. I'm looking forward to seeing that report. They've been given a challenge to go across the province and be done by the end of April to come back and give us some recommendations on how to refocus our lodge operations. And they are looking at everything from modernization of buildings to how we build units, to how we renovate units, to our funding models, and ultimately how our facilities also connect to both community and to continuing care. This was in our mandate letter, and we're looking forward to seeing that. It's been a long time coming, and I think that we're going to see some pretty interesting ideas that can help us continue what is our oldest affordable housing program in the province.
Thank you, Minister, for answer, and thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister again. And according to the business plan on page 123, under the initiatives supporting key objective for outcome 1, and I see that in 2024, 2025, 198.4 million is allocated to build, renew, and maintain affordable housing in Alberta. This includes 62.1 million for the Affordable Housing Partnership Program. And can you please tell us about the Affordable Housing Partnership Program? What has it achieved, and how will Budget 2024 support this good program? And what does the remainder of the funding, around 136 million, support? Thank you, Minister.
Well, thanks again for the question. The Affordable Housing Partnership Program was launched in December 2022, Madam Chair. It brings together partners from public, private and nonprofit organizations to provide more affordable housing where it's needed most. New construction, renovations, and the development of projects overall may be eligible for up to 1/3 of total project costs from us. The provincial contribution may come in the form of both capital grants, land and or buildings, and transfer or long-term leases of government-owned assets. This program is designed ultimately to increase the supply of affordable housing, particularly for seniors and families and individuals with low incomes, as well as those with special needs. The first two intakes to the program resulted in 38 projects receiving provincial funding, which will build over 1,500 housing units and over 190 new shelter spaces. That first intake allocated $125 million to 30 projects in 2022-23, over 1,100 housing units and over 60 shelter spaces. That second intake is going to allocate $68 million to 8 projects in 23-24 for over 300 housing units and over 120 shelter spaces. Those projects have not been announced yet, but the funding is within the budget. Every dollar invested into this program will result in $2 of new investment from partners, including the federal government, which is key because one of the components we want to do is maximize our federal investment as well to try to address the housing challenges. As for the remainder, the $136.8 million, 40.3 of that is allocated to capital maintenance and renewal to preserve existing affordable housing. $25 million for the lodge modernization program to ensure lodges continue to be viable housing for Alberta seniors. $24.6 million, Madam Chair, for the Indigenous Housing Capital Program. $23.6 million for the affordable housing strategy. $18.1 million for the affordable and specialized housing, which is to develop affordable housing projects that provide supportive social housing services for Albertans with a focus on reducing homelessness and ensuring affordable and sustainable housing is available for populations with special needs. And then lastly, $4.7 million, which is going to the large partnership program to increase designated supportive living spaces in seniors lodges where standalone continuing care facilities are just not feasible.
Thank you, Minister. And looking at page 123 of the business plan, in the initiatives supporting key objectives, the ministry has allocated $256.6 million to operate government-supported affordable housing programs. This includes $80.6 million to provide a rent assistance for Albertans in need through the Rent Supplement Program. Can the minister please speak about the importance of the Rent Supplement Program and how will this funding make a difference for Albertans in need?
As we work towards our overall goal of 25,000 more affordable housing units, 12,000 of those will come from rent supplements. Rent supplements remain one of the key strategies to be able to help us address our affordable housing strategy, which is why you see that large investment reflected in this budget.
Thank you so much, Minister. We'll move over to the official opposition, and I see that we have a new member who has joined us. If you would kindly introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, High Chair. Amanda Chapman, MLA, Calgary-Bennington.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Please
Chair.
proceed.
I would like to come back to supply and my earlier questions around overall investments in affordable housing. The minister was unable to give a breakdown of the $9 billion, which again, he's noted multiple times that together with his partners, they're investing $9 billion worth of work to create 13,000 new units. Now, spending $9 billion and only building 13,000 units means the government is spending about $692,307 per unit. So I'd like the minister to explain why these affordable housing units are so costly. That's quite an exceptional amount per unit, unless of course those are not the correct numbers. As well, the minister has said now on multiple occasions that the government has already built 5,000 affordable units as part of their Stronger Foundations plan since 2019, and of course this is referred to on page 123 of the business plan. I find this curious as Stronger Foundations was launched in 2021. Is the minister counting these units as retroactive? Counting these units retroactively is concerning to me as it will skew the total number of affordable units in the province. So can the minister please provide us, through the chair, with the actual number of new affordable housing units since 2021 when the Stronger Foundations plan was actually first implemented? Now, these are some of the dollar investments, but they're also broken down by number of units. The strategic plan on page 22 notes that providing safe, stable, affordable housing for an additional 25,000 households by 2032-33. While this 25,000 number sounds laudable, in fact, Deloitte reports that by 2030, Alberta will need approximately 44,000 new affordable housing units. And because the government's plan is again to only build 13,000 units, we're going to be behind by 31,000 affordable housing units. And I'll also quote the minister himself, and he noted during his press conference in Lethbridge on March 7th, and in fact, just a few moments ago, that by some estimates, we're actually going to need about 150,000 new homes. So I would love for the minister to explain his strategy, his plan to deal with the significant shortfall. We know that City of Edmonton data shows that approximately 1 in 7 Edmonton households were found to be in core housing need, and this number is expected to increase to around 60,000 by 2026. And the data is alarming, and it's quite clear that single-parent households, particularly those that are women-led, have some of the highest rates of core housing need across Alberta, making them extremely vulnerable to homelessness. So the reality is, the data shows that these investments are woefully inadequate. The Edmonton Coalition on Housing and Homelessness notes that we need to be building more than 5,000 units of new social housing every year in Alberta, housing with rent set to ensure that people are not spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And the money that we see in this budget would take 3 years to build that much, even if it were all dedicated to that form of housing. It fails to keep up with current need, let alone to address the decades of built-up deficiencies. Now, I'd also like to speak a little bit about housing starts. This minister has talked a lot about housing starts. In fact, he referred to these in response to my questions in the House on Monday. So I'd like to refer to page 24 of the fiscal plan, which outlines housing starts since 2021. The minister has said multiple times that Alberta has the highest purpose-built rentals in our history, highest housing starts in our history. But these numbers do not refer to affordable housing units. These are housing starts generally. On page 53 of the fiscal plan, the government projects higher housing starts than the average of all private forecasts. We know that this government has missed their housing starts target by 2,000 units this year, as noted in the latest fiscal update on page 16. I can provide the minister with that reference as I can hear him heckling me. So is this goal tangible? How is it going to be met? And despite missing the target this year for housing starts, the government projects higher housing starts over the next 4 years than we have seen this government achieve. So what steps are being ensured so that we'll actually meet those housing targets? We need to see real support put into place to grow construction in this province. With very low supply and vacancy rates, there's no hope for an affordable housing market unless construction really increases. And we can point again to the fiscal plan on page 37 that says that inventories for apartments, semi-detached and row houses are at very multi-year lows due to strong rental demand. So we've got, there are homes being built, which is great. No one's going to dispute that. But we need considerable investment in rentals and in affordable rentals. So can the minister explain how the government plans to stimulate growth in the rental market? What contingencies are in place for a growing, diverse rental market here in Alberta so that the needs of large, mixed generational families are being met, the needs of single Albertans are being met? What is the minister going to do to incentivize multifamily affordable units, particularly for those who can't or won't be homeowners? Thank you, Chair.
The remaining time goes to the minister.
Well, thank you. With the time we got left, we'll focus on, again, helping, hopefully, the official opposition to understand that the housing challenges in the province are about supply. And as we have indicated throughout this meeting, the work that is taking place in this province is being done to increase supply. And the reality is to restore affordability to the market, we need supply. I know that the official opposition is pushing forward with policy items to reduce supply, but we disagree with that. And this budget reflects that. We are working on multiple different levers, which is first off investing in our affordable housing stock in the places where it needs to be in unprecedented ways, at the ability of our construction and nonprofit partners to be able to keep up. We're also investing in processes to be able to make sure that attainable housing goes back up. The industry is telling us right now by reducing red tape and some of the work that we've already done with our partners, they're expecting 50,000 to 60,000 more units already expected above the level of housing starts that they were able to do in the previous 10 years. Madam Chair, what's most interesting is comparing February 24 to February 2023. Single detached home starts were up 24%, and all other housing starts were up 89%. in Alberta, showing that we are continuing to see more rental units and not single detached units coming into the market. Latest numbers from Build Alberta indicate that there's 16,000 purpose-built rentals already new that are started under construction as we speak. 1/3 of new construction in the province right now is actually purpose-built rentals. It used to be something like 10%, which shows that the industry is responding to it. And the most important number is in the last 3 years, in Alberta, more purpose-built rentals have been built than in the 15 years combined. So the processes that are in place to be able to make sure that the market is building simultaneously with the investments that we put into affordable housing is working, and we're well on our way. We're about halfway there to be able to make sure that we accomplish those objectives going forward. I do want to also emphasize the fact that there is significant investments by the Alberta taxpayer in this budget going into creating more houses. On the affordable side as well, 7,000 more households over 3 years, 5,100 capital builds, 1,900 new rent supplements for households, which will help almost 4,000 Albertans be able to receive help. That's significant investment by the Alberta taxpayer. Only an NDP would call multi-billion-dollar investments not significant, but the results speak for themselves as we see January with a record amount of construction only to be broken by February. And we have every reason to believe that we're about to see the biggest record-breaking housing construction season, certainly in Edmonton and Calgary, in the history of the province. And I want to thank all of those organizations for working tirelessly to make sure that happens, despite what the NDP keeps telling them.
Thank you so much, Minister. So I apologize for the interruption, but I must advise the committee that the time allotted for this portion of consideration of the ministry's estimates has concluded. I'd like to remind committee members that we are scheduled to meet this afternoon at 3:30 p.m. to continue our consideration of the estimates of the Ministry of Seniors, Community and Social Services. Thank you, everyone. The meeting is adjourned. And just a reminder that there is an event happening over at the Rotunda. It's International Francophone Day, so please, as many of you who are available, please join that event. Thank you. Great notes, as always.